You must really like Halloween.
You mean Samhain?
What?
Samhain, also known as All Hallows Eve, also known as Halloween. Predating Christianity, the Celtic holiday was celebrated on the one night between autumn and winter when the barrier between the living and the dead was thinnest, and often involved rituals that included human sacrifice.
Podcast. For haunters and Halloween fanatics. Close your eyes and hold on tight.
Welcome to Hauntcast, kiddies. Hauntcast is dedicated to the twisted haunters of the world. Brought to you by you, the paid subscribers, along with Vox Noctis Haunt voiceovers, and all the vendors that donated discounts and prizes to you, the faithful minions. Now let's roll out the blood-red carpet for our host, Chris Baker. All right, boys, pull the lever. Trick or trick?
It's only 8 o'clock and the streets are already packed with costume visitors. Some to show off, others to blend in, but all to celebrate the magical night of Halloween. The one night a year when we can pretend to be the scariest thing we can think of.
Once again, Shocktober has arrived. Welcome to the Dingleberry on the ass hair of the haunt community, known as Hauntcast, radio for haunters and Halloween fanatics.
Warning, not recommended for deaf kids.
Being our Samhain show, we have a triple D-sized episode for you, and our cups runneth over with haunt news, reviews, interviews, tips, tricks, and tactics. We'll also spice things up with a bunch of drunken debauchery just to take the edge off.
Hey, Chris, let me try out some of my new jokes for the Halloween party tonight.
Oh no. Alright, go for it.
Why did Susie fall off the swing?
I don't know, why?
She has no arms. Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Not Susie. What's invisible and smells like carrots?
I don't know, what?
Invisible carrots.
Alright, one more, that's it.
What's red and smells like blue paint?
What?
Red paint. I'm gonna kill tonight. Get it? Kill?
Yeah, Scully, you're hilarious. Alright, enough of this foolishness. I need to set the atmosphere for Halloween by telling the minions a tale of our creepy town legend.
Oh, I know this one. It's the Halloween podcast Massacre.
Will you shut up and let me tell the damn story?
You said a bad word.
On a late Halloween afternoon, a podcast was on its usual iPod. But this wasn't your typical podcast. And they were not your typical personalities. There were 8 of them. They were different. Troubled. Disturbed. Revenant went through a bipolar fit and stage dove into the orchestra pit during Theater of the Mind. Suffering from a severe case of vaginismus, Shellhawk rode her broomstick over the charmed pot. Grimlock, the ADD poster child, bounced all over the World Wide Web during Access Halloween. The driver, Eric Weister, suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, was pulled over for a DWI, driving while idiotic, on the Terror Turnpike. Paranoid schizophrenic Scully was restrained from doing bodily harm to himself and others. Denny, the resident pyromaniac, set fire to the prop shop. And the sickest of all the special people, Chris Baker, that's me, suffering from severe OCD, turned up the tunes with Kristen Lawrence's Halloween carols, confabbed on the bone phone with Salem's most infamous witch, Christian Day, conversed with foam aficionados James, Steve, and Shelley from Woodloom in the black market. And for all the parents that struggled with pneumatics, they did the unthinkable by bringing back award-winning haunter Brent Ross to ease their burden and school them on creating the ultimate home haunt. Hey Scully, go see who that is. Well, as you are stumbling towards the finish line, preparing for the Night of Frights, make sure you use your Hauntcast discount to get some sweet deals from our sponsors. CFX, Mini Spotlight, Master Fog, Pache, DC Props, Fright Theater, Brutal Rust, The Skull Shop, Vox Noctis, Dark Imaginings, Monkey Basic, Necrotic Creations, Fright Catalog, Halloween Asylum, Altered Flesh Effects, Bloody Mary Makeup, DBG Graphics, Woodloom, Bucky's Boneyard, Gothica Contact Lenses, Spider Hill Prop Works, Spectral Illusions, The Grimm Brothers, the 2013 Haunted Halloween Calendar, Sherlock Creations, Isha Creations, Darknet Designs, and Stalloween Tortured Pumpkins. All of the links to their websites and discount codes are located at hauntcast.net/minions/discounts. Hey, what are all you ghouls doing here?
The town canceled trick-or-treating. Some holy ruler selectman convinced the mayor to ban Halloween. Looks like it's over.
What? Over? Did you say over? Nothing is over until we decide it is! Was it over when the Russians blew up the World Trade Center? Hell no!
Russians?
Forget it, he's rolling.
And it ain't over now! 'Cause when the going gets tough, the tough get going! Who is with me? Let's go! Let's go! What the fuck happened to the haunters that I used to know? Where's the spirit? Where's the guts, huh?
Oh, we're afraid to go with you, Chris. We might get in trouble.
Well, you can just kiss my ass from now on. I'm not gonna take this. That selectman, he's dead. The mayor,
Dead. Chris is right. Psychotic, but absolutely right. We gotta take these bastards. Now we can use conventional weapons, but that could take years and cost millions of lives. No, I think we have to go all out. I think the situation absolutely requires a futile and stupid gesture to be done on somebody's part.
and we're just the guys to do it.
Let's go!
By the way, my interview with Brent Ross from DC Cemetery and DC Props is dead ahead.
Ladies and gentlemen, we interrupt our program to bring you a special bulletin.
Hauntcast News.
Knock, knock. It's here, folks. The big month. Crunch time. Time to stop your grinning and drop your linen. Unless, of course, you're monster mudding with it. Just a little update for you from last month. Well, a correction, actually. And a product review that you still have time to make use of before the big 1031. Now, last month, I did a little news report on the fire at the Valley of Fear, the Feasterville area haunted attraction in lower Southampton, Pennsylvania, early last August. When I wrote the news spot, I was still using the original report released just after the fire, when haunt management believed the cause of the fire was sparks from construction equipment or a broken lamp, and not arson. Well, guess what? It turned out to be arson after all. Two idiots who were hired to clean the job site were playing with fireworks inside the haunt. They were in the treasure room of Captain Willie's shipwreck, and one of these intellectual titans took it upon himself to set off a mortar shell, indoors, blowing up a treasure chest and setting the nearby hanging burlap on fire. They tried to get a fire extinguisher to the scene, but it was out of control at that point, and both the pirate ship and the zombie control center haunted house burned to the ground. An off-duty Southampton police officer reported hearing fireworks on the site, and eventually, 2 of the employees frantically moving equipment away from the burning building, 29-year-old Lucas McChesney and 26-year-old John Tardino, were identified as the culprits. A quantity of other fireworks were seen scattered around the scene of the fire, and later Tardino, hey, his name begins with Tard, how about that, showed police a large trash bag full of more fireworks that they'd stashed in the nearby woods. McChesney's lawyer pointed out that it was in fact his client who called the fire department, and that the felony arson charges leveled against him can't stick because the fire wasn't intentional. The district judge disagreed, pointing out that since A, 2 firefighters were injured fighting the blaze, B, the fireworks in question were illegal for the area, and C, the guy was currently on probation for other crimes at the time, the charges should stick just fine. At any rate, whether they truly intended to start a fire or not, in my opinion, is beside the point. At some point, there is a degree of criminal stupidity that should be indistinguishable from criminal intent as far as the sentencing is concerned, and in my opinion, setting off large display-type fireworks indoors in a room full of hanging fabric and dry wood more than fulfills that degree. To me, the most chilling aspect of this is that McChesney has 3 kids, which means he's already reproduced. We can hope the offspring's mental capacities were not inherited from dear old dad. So, haunt safety. It looks like, in addition to overloaded electrical cords and flimsy scenery, you can add pyromaniac douchebags to your list of high-risk things to be avoided in the haunt. If you're a home haunter, you can probably be fairly certain of who's reliable on your work site, since it's fairly small and the people working there will probably be relatives and friends of yours. In a pro haunt, though, it's not so easy, since you may not know personally all the people on your crew. If that's the case, at least make sure you meet everyone who's working for you, and make sure all the crew have met each other so faces can be identified and some random bozo with questionable intentions can't just wander in off the street and slip by without being noticed. And, I said it before, fire retardant materials and additives may be expensive, but if something happens, not using them may cost a lot more, and not just in money. Now, on the lighter side, or darker side, depending on how you want to look at it, it's been a while since the last music review. So, without any further ado, much of the dark orchestral music marketed to haunters in the last 10 years or so has made use of the human voice in a chorus, but not as actual lyrics. Now, this isn't necessarily a bad thing, since full lyrical accompaniment to this sort of music is not easy to do well, and with the wrong lyrics and singer, some very good music can be ruined. Alternating pure instrumental tracks with lyrical music in a haunt can give a musically rich experience, but only if the lyricist, A, writes good lyrics that don't sound stale or contrived, and B, can provide a vocal delivery that complements and enhances the orchestration instead of just trying to follow along with it while sounding spooky. To the rescue comes Destiny Beard. In 2009, the young soprano had landed a collaboration with Gothic music pioneers Midnight Syndicate, putting vocals to their music, and the resultant 6-track EP, The Dark Masquerade, did quite well worldwide. Just a few months ago, her second joint project with Douglas and Goska was released, A Time Forgotten. This themed, full-length album tells the tale of a grieving woman pulled into the spirit world and dropped into a lost time and place, a Victorian luxury hotel destroyed by a deadly fire a century ago and populated by the anguished spirits of those who perished there. The protagonist seeks to reunite with her lost true love, but must find her way out of this doomed place and escape or defeat the evil force that keeps the lost souls trapped within. Destiny Beard has the sort of voice that would be equally at home singing folk music, new age, or opera, and her gothic sensibilities make her a perfect match for music like Midnight Syndicate's. Think of Enya having a classically trained, really spooky daughter. Her voice is clear and powerful, and her 3 to 4 octave range enables her to round out the lead, accompaniment, and chorus beautifully. But it's the emotional content of her singing that really makes the package fly. From lost and forlorn to bold and defiant, her vocal characterization is as haunting as it is haunted. Destiny brings a truly old-world sound to the music, and you just gotta love anyone who can expertly weave Latin into English lyrics in a dark Gothic orchestration. A Time Forgotten is 14 tracks long, and it borrows music from Midnight Syndicate's Realm of Shadows, Gates of Delirium, Vampire, and 13th Hour. Admittedly, there was one track on the CD that didn't quite do it for me, an electronic dance remix by Pat Burgess of the electronic industrial band Encoder. I might have appreciated this reworking of Beard's Farewell Forever from her previous Syndicate collaboration more had I not already been quite familiar with both the original music Noctem Aeternus from Midnight Syndicate's CD Realm of Shadows and Beard's hauntingly beautiful vocal accompaniment to it on The Dark Masquerade. But as I am a huge fan of both the original music, considered by many to be Syndicate's flagship piece, and Beard's lyrical version, the dance club treatment was just too jarring for me, and in my opinion, it didn't do the source material justice. The final track that followed it, however, more than made up for that. My Last Goodbye, unlike the rest of the CD, is a completely original piece performed and composed by Destiny Beard herself. It's an excellent showcase of her vocal, lyrical, and musical talents, and it got me interested in hearing more of her outside the dark gothic genre. All in all, A Time Forgotten, like The Dark Masquerade before it, is a perfect addition to the Haunter's musical library. Mixing these eerily alluring tracks in with your instrumental music will add a new level of richness to your haunt soundtrack. And besides, it's just a damn good CD to pop in and listen to for its own sake. You can find it on Beard's own website, www.destinybeard, that's DESTINIBEARD.com, or at www.midnightsyndicate.com. Order soon, there's still time to get it before the big dance, and you'll be glad you did. You can also listen to more of her on YouTube. Look for the YouTube user account Destiny91. Well, that'll do it for this month. Hey, 2 news spots in 7 months. I'm on a roll here. Keep cranking on those props and have a great build. And please, I hate to sound like a mother hen, but avoid stupidity and be safe, before, during, and after. Live to haunt another day, with all of your fingers. And remember, it may be our obsession, but it's still a game, so remember to keep it fun. From the Hauntcast newsroom, this is Revenant reminding one and all, let's be scary out there, and have a hellish and happy Halloween.
Happy Samhain from Hauntcast.
Hello, trick-or-treaters. This is Kristen Lawrence. I have a little treat to put in your goodie bags. My interview with Chris is coming up on Hauntcast.
Sticky feeties, 8-week creepies, spider swinging a thing on see-through string. Widows, daddies, wolfy laddies, spider laying thread, a might dread, silky architect for insect possession, a confection collection, and when a prize flies to your web, you're grinning or spinning, it's dizzy dead. La 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 la. Sneaky, scary, wily, wary spider looming from your woven looms. Eyes are beady, mouth are greedy, spider poisoning within your ring. Silky architect for insect possession or confession.
Looking to add some life to your dead? Have an idea in mind but lack the mechanical know-how? If that is the case, with production capabilities ranging from simple effects all the way to complex animatronic creatures, DC is your one-stop shop for all your haunting needs. Check us out on the web at dcprops.com. That's D as in devious, C like concoctions, props.com. Materializing imagination.
By the pricking of my thumbs.
Idea for the next big human interest story? Sitting all night in an empty house by the swamp?
Look, 1, I've got nothing else right now, but 2, there have been legends about the old Beckett place for 100 years. Ever since that rich woman built the big old house and carved out that pool from the swamp in 1903, there have been stories of the place being haunted.
Yeah, I know. Growing up here, I heard the pond was originally a lake pool, but I never seen anything there.
Have you ever stayed there at night? Ever read the stories? People talking about strange things in the swamp and Beckett's pond, noises, things missing, and those muddy prints everywhere back in the 30s when everybody disappeared one night, never to be seen again.
No, I haven't read them. You're the newspaper guy. But I heard she and her servants took off because she ran out of money during the Depression.
Some of that may have been true, but she still had money. It took care of the place and kept it in the family until 30 years ago when the last Beckett passed away. Since then, it's been sold 8 times, with long periods where nobody lived there at all.
Okay, but what about the last owners that took off? I heard he was tied to the mob and that's what happened to them. Are you going to try to say they were scared off by ghosts instead of by organized crime?
Yes, I am. And hey, what if they were not scared off at all? What if they never left? What if they're all still here? What if some night something came out of that swamp and dragged them all into it?
That's your angle? It's haunted by muddy ghosts?
No, more of a swamp creature angle. Well, nobody really knows what happened, and if they did, it wouldn't be a mystery now, would it?
Okay, but are you sure you have everything you need before I leave? I mean, I'm still not comfortable leaving you here, chained to this room all night for your big expose. What if nothing happens?
Then I'll make a story out of that too. Look, don't worry, that's why you're here. Observing me, locking the cuffs and chained to this old frame bed. And why you have the key, and why in the morning, when you come to get me out of here, you can be a credible witness. Here, take my phone. I don't want anyone to say I cheated here. I will be alone in this house. I have food, water, my recorder, sleeping bag, a lantern, and a bucket. Now, take a quick picture and scoot.
Okay, if you say so. Say cheese! Alright, good night, and good luck.
Okay. Reporter Peter Sabat here recording A Night in the Beckett House, or What is in Beckett's Pond. I've been in the house now since dusk at 8 p.m. 3 hours later, it's full dark and the swamp's nightlife is alive and kicking. Really loud, actually. I am situated in one of the 3rd floor bedrooms near a window that overlooks the overgrown pond, which is the entrance to the swamp. There is plenty of moonlight and I can see pretty clearly. Funny, you would think with this house being sold and resold so many times since the initial family has been gone, there would not be a stick of anything original still here. But actually, most of the furnishings are Beckett family era. Some of it must be worth a pretty penny, if you could get the musty smell out of them. I've done quite a bit of research on the house and the original widow Beckett. It's my theory that organized crime was a factor of disappearances here, not the last owners, but the first. I think the widow was some kind of boss, then got mixed up in bootlegging, and when things got too hot here, that's when she sent her children out of state to those boarding schools. How does a woman at the turn of the century become a powerful crime boss? I think she had the perfect way to dispose of inconveniences like rival criminals or witnesses, the swamp. All she or her cohorts would have to do is put bodies in a boat and row them deep into the swamp, weigh them down and dump them. Nobody would ever find them. They would just be swallowed up, so to speak. Yep, that's the angle. Oh crap, I just dropped my house key into that grate. Maybe I can pry it up with the edge of this cuff. Hey, there's something in here. Paper? A booklet? Gotcha. Looks like parts of a journal, just a few pages that were ripped out. Ink is faded. Very nice handwriting, though. Hard to read. Mother is sending us away, but I'm the only one of us that knows why. If anyone finds out, they will kill us all. Wow. What are the chances I'd find this here tonight? At first, I didn't know what was in the boats that were rowed into the swamp some nights, but then I hid by the barn and saw. It was people under those sacks they were taking out there, and when they came back, they were gone. I asked about it once and was told with a smack those men were just gigging for frogs at night. I was right, the widow was dumping bodies. There's more. But once when there were no boats going into the swamp for a long while, something came out of that pond. I saw it from my window. I had my lantern lit and could see a man shape walking out of the mud looking for something. The next day, one of our sheep was missing from the barn, and there was mud everywhere, and I found a footprint in it, very big, bigger than anything I had seen. I hope everyone else will be well after me and my siblings are gone from here, but I can't leave soon enough for my liking. However it started, those things in the swamp want to be fed, and I don't want to be here when they come looking. Trails off. I can't read the last of it. But man, what a story. Whoa, something out there? Maybe a deer or a possum? Hey, there is someone down there by the pond. The realtor said I would be the only one out here tonight. Who is that? He's looking up here, waving. Hello! What the heck are you doing here so late? Oh, that face. Can't make it out. Does he have long hair? Dreadlocks? He sees me and is coming up to the house. Wait, he was still standing in the pond. This guy is huge. No, that can't be real. The light in the window. Oh, I'll put it out. But it's too late. I hear it opening the door. Oh my God. That thing can't be real. Not the story, it's just a story. It's on the second floor. Shh. Be quiet, baby. I can't get out. Why didn't I have a spare key? No. Oh my God, no.
Okay, it's time to go. How is your big advent? What the hell? What's with the mud? Pete? Hello? There's mud everywhere. Here's your stuff, but I know you can't get out. Are you under the bed? No, just the cuff. Oh my God, and it's covered in blood.
I hope you enjoyed The Swamp Creature. Welcome, haunters. I'm your host, Ed Gannon, professional haunter, Something Wicked Productions, and in this episode of Something Wicked, we'll talk about one of the auxiliary haunt attractions you can add to your existing show to give it more value. Specifically today, a professional pumpkin carving display. Now, I don't know about you, but nothing says a Halloween season to me like a jack-o'-lantern. And there's many ways you can display them effectively. You have the regular ones, you just cut out an eye, nose, and some kind of mouth. Sometimes when we were kids, we'd get creative and put fangs on them, or something with toothpicks, whatever, but jack-o'-lanterns have come a long way. I'm also a professional pumpkin carver, and I usually use Funkins, the foam imitation pumpkins, because obviously they last forever, as long as you're careful. You can do the same techniques on a real pumpkin, but of course they're not going to last very long. First we'll go over a few quick steps on how to carve a pumpkin, and then we'll talk about how to display them effectively. So whether you're using a real pumpkin or an imitation pumpkin like Fumpkin or Jemmy, the key to a great jack-o'-lantern is a template. Templates are pre-designed patterns that you put on over your pumpkin before you carve it. Then you carve right through that pattern and into the meat of your pumpkin, or funkin'. You can find some awesome pre-made templates in Halloween stores, craft stores, and all over the web. Just Google jack-o'-lantern pattern and you'll be very happily surprised. Now you can obviously also make your own templates. The way I like to do them is you take a pattern or a photograph and you bring it down in a photo editing program down to around 3 colors. Okay, those 3 colors would be the meat of the pumpkin on the outside, not cut at all, then a layer that's shaved so light can shine through, and then another layer that's cut all the way through the pumpkin, which is basically a hole in the pumpkin. Now when making these patterns, you have to keep in mind that as you're cutting them out, there has to be something that holds up the pieces that may be in the middle, suspended. For example, if you're doing a spider web, you can't just cut out all the edges of the web, because the spider web would fall in. You need to have some edges that are still attached. So let's say you have your template and you want to attach it to your pumpkin. There's a couple of quick ways to do it. The easiest way may be clear Elmer's glue, and you put a light coating of that on your pumpkin and stick your pattern over it. Or you could use toothpicks if you're using a real pumpkin, but on a funkin', of course, they'll leave a hole. Now you have your template on your pumpkin. Prepare to make a mess. Use safety equipment like gloves, glasses, masks. Actually, pumpkins, even though they're mostly water, real pumpkins do have a high acidic value, and you probably want to wear some kind of glove. If you're carving an imitation pumpkin, you definitely want to wear some kind of mask and goggles. What tools do you use to carve a pumpkin? All of them. Okay, my favorite actually is the Dremel tool, and even on a real pumpkin I use the Dremel tool. It's very, very fast, it works like a laser, and just takes off exactly what you want to take off and nothing else. Usually with a knife sometimes you can get stuck and you're trying to push and it'll cut too fast, too far, and you go over the spot you want to cut. With the Dremel tool that will never happen. You can also use good sharp wood chisels, saws, different things like this. For different cuts and different angles, these are really the best way to go. Another quick trick to carving fake pumpkins, which we've all known since we were kids for real pumpkins, is you have to shave the inner wall. So if you want light to come through it a little brighter, for a part that's, you have to take the skin off and you have a little like second layer there, you have to shave and thin down the inner wall. Many of the funkins that you get, the imitation pumpkins, have a very bumpy, bubbly kind of inside, and you need, the trick to having them perfect is to shave that down to make it even. Again, the Dremel tool works really well for this. I also, like a funkin, usually carve my pumpkins out from the bottom. Okay, this goes for real pumpkins too. That way when you light it from underneath, the lid is not going to fall in. Now when you're carving your pumpkins, I always cut them from the bottom, just like they have the funkins. They all have the hole in the bottom. I never cut it from the top anymore, not since I was a kid. Without a hole in the top, it's much neater. If you're doing a professional light-up display, you know, you want to light it up with a fluorescent bulb, the ones that look like light bulbs, and you can put a circular hole in the back of the pumpkin, not necessarily in the bottom, and you can stick that light bulb through. Okay, some of these designs you have may be pretty intricate, and you want to have a 100-watt equivalent fluorescent bulb. The fluorescents don't burn as hot, so they won't cook your real pumpkin, and of course they'll be nicer to your fake pumpkins too. Now to display them. If you're doing an event, you can theme some of your pumpkins for each of your haunted attractions. If you have more than one, you can do your logo. I would certainly do sponsors logos on the pumpkins. We've been doing that for a long time. And if you want to display them all together, you can have a shack or a shed with a plexiglass front, okay, big 4x8 window, 6x8 window, depending on how you want to split it up. And this allows you to put shelves inside of many levels. You can see all the pumpkins that you've carved. The way to light them up, for some of your more intricate pumpkins, you're going to need individual light bulbs like the fluorescent ones I talked about, and those come in many colors now too, so you're not limited to just white or yellow. Or you can very carefully staple Christmas lights, the C9 bulbs, and usually do 2 for each pumpkin. Again, for a thicker wall pumpkin, you may need 3. And they are put in a group like a little bouquet in the center so they don't actually touch the pumpkin. The wires are stapled down, and the way the bases are, if you staple them close enough and carefully enough, they will stand up on their own, so you won't need any additional bases. 3 or 4 strings will light up quite a few pumpkins and look beautiful. Some of these pumpkin sheds can be built on skids of pressure-treated wood, and then if you have a tractor, you can drag them off so you don't have to keep them there all season, but you don't have to take them down either. You can screw plywood to the front, come fall, you unscrew it, tidy them up, and off you go. I'm also a big fan of the new LED Halloween lights. Obviously, they burn a lot cooler, they last a really long time, they have a great look to them overall, so you can put those in front. So you have your jack-o'-lanterns and you have the orange and or purple lights around it. You throw some imitation silk fall leaves over them if you're looking for fire retardancy, and voila, you've got a beautiful permanent Halloween jack-o'-lantern display, which is perfect from everything from the professional attraction down to I just want one on my front porch. One quick side note, I had a friend of mine that used to take a picture of his family and his kids every year for Halloween, and he would carve that, bring that picture down to 3 colors or 4 colors, and he would carve that into a pumpkin. And every year they had those pumpkins out in the front window. So you had every year of his kids growing up in different Halloween costumes. And what a great heirloom as they get older. And you could do that with their kids, and so on and so on. And by that you can see these can be much more than just a decoration. They can actually bring Halloween home. Oh, look at the time. Well, we'll wrap up this segment for now. I want to tell you all happy Halloween. If you have a haunted attraction, I hope you all do very, very well. I am Director of Operations for Fright Kingdom this year in Nashua, New Hampshire. All-indoor haunted theme park with 5 haunted attractions and several other things inside, including a new Monster Energy Midway and all different kinds of things. So, very excited about that. Come on up and see us. In future episodes of Something Wicked, we'll talk about more aspects of professional haunting, their methods, philosophies, how-tos, and so much more. If you have any suggestions or questions, please feel free to email me at edward@somethingwickedproductions.com or edgwicked@aol.com. And I'm always available for a quick phone call or email. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to contact me. So, until the next time, again, happy holidays, happy Halloween, and be safe. This is Wick Ed Gannon, www.somethingwickedproductions.com, saying, have a wicked day.
Step right up and get your props over here.
The black market.
We are having a foursome in the black market. I am joined by Woodlooms, James, Steve, and Shelly. How y'all doing?
Doing well. Good. Good to be here.
So do you guys have your own haunts? What's your deal? What's your background in haunting?
Yeah, we do a pretty big yard display. Actually, Steve and I and Shelly are neighbors, so the display kind of spreads across both yards.
So it's a sprawling yard haunt that just consumes the entire street?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. We're every year it just gets bigger and bigger.
So what's your name of the haunt?
The cemetery is the Thornhill Cemetery.
Where's that located?
We're in Independence, Missouri.
So you guys have the wood shop, and then you also have the prop shop. What came first? Did the prop shop come first?
No, actually, we started in 2006 as a wood shop doing furniture and custom cabinets. As our haunt addiction grew, we started utilizing some of those skills and tools to make some quality tombstones that we just couldn't seem to find in the stores. And it kind of snowballed from there. I built a CNC router for my cabinet business, and we started using that on foam for tombstones last year. So this is our second season doing the tombstones.
Now you guys have a wide selection of tombstones that you offer, and what people can do is they can pick their own epitaphs. They can choose their own font for the epitaph. I think you'll even do more than just put the epitaphs on there. You put some other detailing on the stone. They can choose the multiple styles of stones to put the epitaph on.
We have about 70 different size and shape combinations, but those are kind of just starting points. We do a lot of custom work where people send us stones, pictures they've taken from old cemeteries, and we can reproduce those. We do wall plaques, yard signs, kind of architectural stuff, trim work, molding, for haunts, full panels, whatever somebody wants, we'll do. The website, we really just kind of picked, some of the more common shapes and a variety of sizes and put those out there to kind of give people something to choose from.
Has anybody thrown you any curveballs, just stuff that you don't normally come across?
Probably the one that really kind of threw us off was we got a call from a guy running a space shuttle museum, and he wanted a third scale foam space shuttle carved. That's out of the haunt realm. That was quite a challenge. Just to design it up was it was big.
Do you charge for your design work?
Well, that's one of the things we do is with the design is all of our design work's free. So if somebody sends us an idea, we'll design it up and do a 3D rendered preview for them at no cost. When they decide they like it, that's when we go ahead and cut everything out.
Do you have anything new that you're going to be adding?
We're going to be adding some larger stones. We just added in the last about the last week or two a new obelisk. It's 6'3" that we can custom carve a name onto the front. So we're going to be looking at some larger stones, upwards of like 6 inches thick, probably close to 4 foot tall.
Give the minions a rundown on the off-the-shelf stones that you're offering on the site.
We start off with the economy stone, which is more of our kind of a party tabletopper. It's made more for indoor use, decorations. We do a lot of retirement parties, birthday parties, kind of gag gifts with that one. Our standard stone is 24 inches tall, 16 inches wide. Then we go up to our tall stone that is 32 inches tall and 16 inches wide. Then we have a large that is 32 tall and a full 24 inches wide. And the wide stone is 32 wide and 24 tall. Then we have a variety of specialty stones like our obelisk and Celtic crosses.
How thick are each one of these stones?
3 inches thick. The base is 7 inches wide. So it's generally there are 2 pieces of 1.5 inch thick foam. We pre-carve grooves down the middle to accept a piece of 1/2 inch PVC pipe so you can stake it down with some rebar. So those will be pre-carved on the inside of the stone for you. We do that on everything but the economy stone, which is why we recommend that that's an indoor stone. It's just a single layer thick, so only 1.5 inches. So
you basically created Woodloom because you were looking for certain stones that you just couldn't find out there on the market?
Exactly. We were looking for, tombstones for our yard haunts. The brittle styrofoam ones, the kind of generic RIP, those stones were just kind of boring. We wanted something that looked more realistic.
All of our shapes come directly from the cemetery. We go out and take pictures like the weirdos, and we have designed all of our shapes based on what you would actually see in a real cemetery. So it looks real. It's realistic. And it's reasonable price.
Now, I know a lot of haunters prefer the cutesy or the funny epitaphs, and I'm not a big fan of that at all. I mean, nothing against it. It's just not for me. All my tombstones in my yard have names of old horror actors, most of the Universal, Boris Karloff, Bela Lugosi. You just did the Claude Rains one for me that came out sweet. Do you find that most of the people who come to you are looking for the kind of more cutesier, funnier epitaphs?
It's about a 50-50 split between the cutesy names and the serious, going for the realistic look.
Yeah.
We actually plan on adding a section to the site here soon of name stones, like you mentioned, with Lon Chaney and Bela Lugosi. We've got a whole list of stones like that already designed. As many of them as possible designed after the actual stones.
I just picked a shape that I didn't already have out there in my cemetery. And then I was looking online to find Claude Rains' actual stone so I could see the font that was used and the epitaph, and the stone shape was almost identical.
Yeah, it worked out well. We had actually already had a Claude Rains design.
So anyway, what are your plans for this Halloween? Do you have the haunt starting to go up?
We're starting to. Our only big project for this year, is a couple new props, and we're going to try to carve out a Doctor Who TARDIS.
Has the business eaten into your prop building time and working on your haunt?
Yeah, it's actually taken over all the time.
Must be all that exposure from Hauntcast, right?
Yeah, it's about a 12 hours a day deal right now.
So you guys doing the social media foolishness as well?
Well, we have a Facebook page. It's under Woodloom, and it's I post a lot of pictures out there and different ideas of what we do, because we just don't do tombstones. But I get a lot of emails for different things and custom work, and I do a lot of film tombstones and plaques. I just did a Mason cornerstone for a film that's going to be filmed in the New York University.
And we love getting pictures back of people after they finished and painted up their stones. So we like getting those and posting them out on the Facebook page for people to see.
As you guys are sponsors, I've been trying to do my part to push you guys on the Minions.
Yeah, the Minions have been great to us. We love them.
And to all the Minions, especially those ones who weren't aware, Woodloom is offering a 10% discount, hopefully bumped up to 15 by next year. We'll talk about that later. But a 10% discount on all their products. So is there a certain cutoff for them to get orders in for Halloween?
Right now, we're still keeping up. It generally takes about a week after all the designs are approved. So right now, we're pushing through. We're going to take orders as late as we can. But generally, if you're within a week and a half, that's about the minimum.
So go ahead and like their Facebook page. It's listed as Woodloom. And also, what's your website?
www.woodloom.com. Get in and check out our prop shop.
So if you're too busy working on other props or just don't have the time to make another tombstone or two, go over to woodloom.com, purchase yourself a stone, just send them the epitaph, tell them what kind of font you want. They'll put the whole thing together. They'll send you a mock-up. They'll crank it out in about a little over a week, and all you have to do is slap some dry lock on there, tea stain it, and it's ready to rock. All right, guys, it was great chatting with you, and happy Halloween.
All right, good talking to you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Greetings, mortals. I am Macabre, Gravely Macabre of Castle Blood.
This is Ed Douglas from Midnight Syndicate.
This is Kevin Kennedy from the Brewster Yard Haunt.
This is Robert Santos of Mantooth Manor and Necrotic Creations.
Hi, this is Chris Ainsworth from the Thornhill Woods Haunted House.
This is Brent from DC Design Studio and DC Cemetery.
Happy Halloween!
My oldest this year came up to me for Halloween. I go, what are you going to be, buddy? He goes, I'm going to be a geek from the 80s. Can I look in your closet? My little one wanted to be a hobo. I didn't even know they still knew that term, hobo. Bum, derelict, homeless person, hobo. We went to the party store, a hobo costume, $40. $40 to look homeless. I go, oh, hell no. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to go down to the grocery store, steal a shopping cart. Here's a Sharpie, cost me $1. We're going to write, we'll work for food. You go to door, you hold your candy. That's all right. You gotta... My little one got a note home from school this year from the school that said the costumes could no longer be scary, violent, no superheroes, preferably characters from the Bible. We sent her as Satan. I figure for $30 a month, we're getting a laugh out of this place, Father. I'll tell you that right now. Parents used to go door to door with their kids and like stand off in the distance and make sure they got good candy and you rifle through it when they got home, make sure it wasn't poison. You'll get that. You got kids, you go rifle through it, then you go, oh, this Snickers looks tainted. My mom used to do that with the Smarties. She'd unravel them. Oh, they can open these really easy. I better eat them and make sure, you know. She's doing lines with the lick'em sticks, and then they're like, fuck. I wanted that. Now the parents don't give a shit. The parents are actually, in my neighborhood, we're following the kids in golf carts drinking. Little dude came to my door, he's like, trick or treat, Mr. Tim, and my daddy needs ice. Your daddy needs help, little man.
Hey, all you groovy guys, gals, and ghouls, are you ready to get down?
Ghouly grooves.
Oh, yeah, baby.
I'm having a witch's brew with organist, composer, and vocalist, Kristen Lawrence. Kristen.
Hello. Hello.
So,
thank you for having me on.
Yeah, I should have cleaned up the dungeon since we were going to have you over. I'm kind of embarrassed with the filth all over. But anyway, it's great. It's great to have you, and you get a chance to stop in. You have such a unique sound, and the first time I heard A Room with a View, I was just floored. I was like, who is this? It was so different. You. And I listened to a lot of I guess Halloween horror music, and a lot of it tends to lean metal, rockabilly, but you flip things upside down, and it's you consider your music to be Halloween carols. Is that right?
I do. I felt a need. Well, when I was in college, I studied organ performance. And so, of course, organs do not play only Halloween music. We play for weddings and church services, but we also play for funerals. And I have always loved Halloween. And so during my studies at college, when I had free time, I would go steal away to the library when you had the luxury of losing time. And I would get lost there studying Halloween history, because as a kid I was so in love with Halloween and the feelings and the senses, and I loved how October felt. But when I grew older and went away to college, I started thinking a little more scholarly. When we're adults, we think, well, why do I like this so much? And so I thought, I am going to go study Halloween history. And they didn't have any courses. It was a personal study. So when I wasn't working on my general ed classes and my specific organ major classes, music classes, I'd go there. And funny enough, I found a lot of information in the children's section of the library. But then I went further into the folklore section. And then I discovered Jack Santino and Leslie Bannatyne, who are Halloween researchers, and they're my two favorites. They have done a world of research and really opened my mind up on this subject. And so I thought, okay, when I graduate, I had a lot of work to do. I had a lot of practicing to do for my organ recitals that were required to graduate, and I thought, okay, I'm going to study as much as I can, but I need to do something with Halloween history and music. Something. I don't know what, but I feel it. It's in my bones. It's in my blood. It was so tasty to me. And so I experimented writing little songs here and there, cats, jack-o'-lanterns, maybe a little bit of, researched about soul cakes and how those are involved with Halloween history. But my Halloween carols proper idea didn't occur to me until I was playing organ for a funeral, funny enough. And it was between when I was playing the organ, the preacher was speaking, and I was sitting there, and out of nowhere, the tune Ghost of John came to my mind. Just sitting there by myself. Anyway, that came to my mind, and that's an old famous round. I used to sing that as a kid, and that came to my mind, and I thought, bam, we need more rounds for Halloween, because I loved singing it as a kid, and because it's a round, it harmonizes itself, so I'd sing with my older sister, and I thought, ooh, this is so beautiful and so spooky. And because it is so beautiful, that's why it has lasted so many centuries. Why would people bother to pass on a tune and record it and keep it and play it over and over and sing it over and over through the centuries if it's not beautiful and intriguing and catchy, right? That's why folk tunes last. And I thought, we need more music like that. And so I came home from that funeral and I wrote my first 4 rounds. And one of those first 4 was Sleeping Dust on my Broom with a View album. And then I thought, that's what it is. And originally I thought, I love alliteration and consonants, and so I thought Halloween hymns, because HH. But then for marketing purposes, and I think to really better say what these are, they're Halloween carols. So that's why, and I have the URL, HalloweenCarols.com. And in fact, your listeners, anyone, can get a free download from my website, HalloweenCarols.com, of Ghost of John, the tune that inspired this whole project.
Now, was that done by yourself, or was that from another artist, that download?
It's my own arrangement of it.
Okay, great.
It's a traditional tune, but I did my own arrangement, and it has traditionally one verse. I thought, well, that's not enough. So I wrote 4 more verses for that recording. And then a few years ago, I was interviewed by Rue Morgue magazine, and to have an exclusive piece in their magazine, they asked for something, and so I wrote for them 3 exclusive verses. But that's something I encourage, for example, schools to do. Teachers can use my Ghost of John recording, and in fact, on my latest release, The Raven, I have released an instrumental version of Ghost of John, because school teachers have emailed me and said, do you have that available as an instrumental version? I want my kids in my classroom to sing that for Halloween. I said, oh, not yet. So that's why it's on this CD now. And for a classroom exercise, teachers can have their kids write their own verse for Ghost of John. And it's really fun. We did it here with an Orange County school. I'm from California. And I was working with a teacher, and they chose winners of the school, of the whole school, and I posted the winning verses on my website. And I love the creativity of young minds. Really, really clever thinking. So you can still see that in my news feed on my website. So I encourage teachers everywhere to do that. It's really fun.
And it helps spread Halloween to the younger generation. Not that they're probably not into it already.
Right. Well, and Halloween is for all ages. This has been discussed by many a Halloween scholar, how it used to be for kids only, but then adults wanted to have fun with it. And we loved it as kids, but we don't want to give it up and all of that. And so I write my music for all ages. I hear from people. I hear from everyone. And it's really edifying and really exciting to hear from people, all ages, all types of people, young teenagers, 6-year-olds. I have their parents tell me how much they like my music. Someone recently told me, play the cat song. Oh, was that you? That was you. Play the kitty cat song, right? Was that you? Goths and vampire freaks and metalheads, and how much they love my music. And see, all of these influences, I think they like my music because I like their music. I love metal. I love classical. I love folk. I love all types of good music. And so I think that's the little sprinkling of magic that goes into my music. All these outside music influences influence my personal music, and so I think that's why people of all sorts are drawn in.
Now, you have the one album only at this time? A Broom with a View is your only LP?
No. I have 3 albums plus a compilation album. My first album was Arachnitect, and that is the one that has Ghost of John on it. And then I released A Broom with a View. And then, as a little compilation album, I released Vampire Empire, which is, Vampire Empire is a track from A Broom with a View, but I released that as the title of radio edits and an extra track in there. And then, just this past March, I released my latest CD, which is called The Raven, Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven. And it was a lucky coincidence. This music came to me, I still remember the day, November 2nd, 2010. And it was the evening, and I was in my room, and I was working on arranging and orchestrating my next batch of Halloween carols, because I have a ton of Halloween carols already written, and they're just waiting their place in line for me to orchestrate them and record them and get them off on a CD. So I was working on that, but the creativity wasn't flowing and kind of hit a wall and okay, stop. Let's clean up around my messy piano so maybe my brain will function a little more clearly, because I was feeling the scatterbrain at that moment. Nothing was flowing. So I was cleaning up, found some old folders. Well, what's in here? Well, in one of those folders was a Xerox copy of Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven. And I had forgotten. I had Xeroxed it for a Halloween party a few years prior. And I, in fact, did a reading. I got 3 friends to do a reading of it. So I had it highlighted for the narrator and then the man himself, and then I had a friend do the Raven, and she was so funny, my friend Catherine. What a hoot. Anyway, but those were in the folder, and I'd forgotten about them. And, Chris, it was like magic. I opened that folder, saw the poem, and it was like a spell came over me. This little raven spirit flew into my room, and I sat down at my piano. I am not kidding. I sat down. It's almost like I was in a trance, and my hands went right to the piano, and I sang the first line. Boom, the melody came right out, and I thought, wait a minute, have I heard this somewhere before? But I had never heard it before, but it came out so naturally. I wondered if I had, and then not 35 minutes passed, and I had the melody and chords written for the whole stanza. And there are 18 stanzas in that poem, and so the melody fits with all of them. And then it would be another 3 months before I finished the orchestrations for it. But I thought, I need to do the whole poem. And I was inspired by artists that I love, like Lorena McKennitt. Lorena sets a lot of poetry to music. In fact, she set The Lady of Shalott to music, which runs 10 minutes. And I thought, okay, 18 verses. I'm looking at 20 minutes. And I thought, nope, it has to be done. It has to be done. I'm jumping the shark here, but people love The Raven, and people love Edgar Allan Poe. And someone needs to set all 20 minutes of all 18 verses of his poem to music. And so I did, and I arranged it to describe how he's feeling in the moment and to describe all the emotions of that great piece of poetry. So, anyway, but yeah, I released it this last March, and it was a lucky coincidence that the John Cusack movie, The Raven, came out at the same time, but the melody came to me before I even knew that they were filming that movie. So I think my lucky stars that they came out at the same time, because that certainly helped me with people Googling The Raven. I hope a lot of people will have Raven and Edgar Allan Poe themed Halloween parties this year and might want to use my music for the poem.
Hey, Kristen, by the way, since you brought up The Raven, how about you set that up for us?
This is from my latest CD, Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven, and it's about a 3-minute clip to give you a teaser, because the whole piece is about 20 minutes long, because the poem is 18 verses long. But here's a little clip.
Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping as of someone gently rapping
Hybratech. Everywhere you look, our diverse lines of goods and services makes your life safer, more healthy, and more fun. We design smart weapons for homeland defense and high-tech games for home entertainment. We're the most trusted name in toxic waste disposal. And we make your favorite snack foods, too. Hybratech is here to help when disaster strikes. We were on the front lines containing the 1986 Chernobyl nuclear disaster. Whenever there is an outbreak of zombie reanimation, Hybratech leads the charge in containment. We're the exclusive contractor for the Environmental Protection Agency and the World Health Organization. We neutralized the last zombie specimens. Thanks to Hybratech, there hasn't been a single zombie outbreak in over a decade. Hybratech, chemical solutions for the entire planet.
Theater of the Mind.
The relentless heat has finally broken, and fall is once again in the air. October, the month of pumpkins, the month of falling leaves, the month of blind panic for home haunters realizing that they only have 3 weekends left. Ah, the sound of anguished screams wafting like wood smoke through the crisp autumn air. I love October. Setting a project schedule and sticking to it is paramount in large creative endeavors. Unfortunately, for some of us, it's like pulling teeth, barehanded, at least for me. In the first season of Hauntcast, I mentioned a concept I remembered from a business class I took as an undergrad, the 3-track plan. In it, one fleshes out a vision of what they realistically believe they can accomplish within the time and budget available, and that becomes the primary goal, called Track B. A stripped-down, acceptable minimalist version should also be kept in mind to fall back on in case things go awry, which is called Track C. And Track A is that elusive holy grail, the amped-up, better-than-planned-for version that usually only happens when the stars are in proper alignment and copious amounts of extra time and cash suddenly spill into one's lap. It's easy for a haunter to become despondent during crunch time because all too often it seems like that big scary bummer called real life is always trying to push us into that Track C. Money always seems to run out faster than expected, and time, well, we all know how suddenly it seems to slip away from us. Which brings me to another 3-part concept that was introduced to me when I first got into the masquerade costuming community, and we called it the Rule of the 3. In essence, it goes like this. Do you want it fast? Do you want it cheap? Or do you want it good? Pick 2. The basic premise is that a quality result will require input of material resources and time. A less expensive project will require extra time and labor to bring a quality result. And if time or manpower are in short supply, extra expenditure is necessary to bring in pre-made or specialty items and materials. In general, this is a pretty accurate rule of thumb, but it fails to take into account certain intangibles that can also influence the outcome. Namely, ingenuity and luck. You might think of luck as something that you can't rely upon. It either happens or it doesn't. But, as good fortune would have it, haunters have one lucky advantage inherent in the whole process. This is theater. We create illusions. Quality, for us, consists of how effective we are at leaving certain impressions in the mind of the audience, and ingenuity can go a long way toward that. The rule of the 3, like any rule in the Matrix, can often be bent, or sometimes even broken. It may all simply come down to our interpretation of what a quality result is. Last month I mentioned touring the Erebus Haunted Attraction in Pontiac, Michigan. The place made a real impression on me on several levels. The creativity and resourcefulness of the people who run that place are amazing. Even though the place is huge, it was the largest haunt in the world for a while there, they still think like home haunters. Shopping sprees at Kirby's and Dempster's are frequent, and there are whole rooms in the building full of scavenged and recycled materials waiting for the chance to become a part of someone's nightmare. And the cleverness of design manifested there goes beyond just the use of free or cheap materials. There's a certain visual mindset involved, the ability to see things not for what they are, but for what they could be. An item's original purpose is irrelevant. It's yours now, its new function and role are up to you. In the prop and scenery world, shape and texture are everything. A lot of time and effort spent on custom building things from raw materials can often be circumvented by piecing together unrelated items that already have certain contours built into them. For example, at Erebus, there are large sections of the haunt made to look like a high-tech facility, so there are entire walls and areas covered in what appears to be machinery and various industrial-looking surfaces. I knocked on one, and it was a heavy molded plastic, and I asked Ed Taribas, the owner, where he got his vac-form panels. I was surprised to learn that none of these panels were actual scenery. They were pallets. Industrial equipment often comes shipped on specially molded plastic pallets that are contoured to snugly fit whatever motor or part the company is shipping, and so the underside takes on that appearance. Just screw them to the wall and paint. Fast, cheap, or even better, free, and durable, and once a little black, gray, and metallic color is deftly applied, a humble shipping tray becomes an industrial nightmare. Fast, cheap, and good. Sometimes you can't have it all. You just gotta see it so you know it if you got it. Look with your mind's eye, and you might be surprised at what's available to you. Time and money is often spent creating realistic details that could be easily faked. I learned a lot about this from the costumers. For example, a pair of masterclass costumers showed how they fake embroidery on many costumes using spray paint and lace. A piece of ornate lace is sealed with silicone or polyurethane and laid down on a fabric, and spray paint is misted over it. The lace is removed, and the pattern is indistinguishable from ornamental needlework from a distance of more than 15 feet or so in ordinary room lighting, even closer in dim or stage light. Thus, a $5 piece of ordinary cloth becomes $100 worth of rich brocade in a couple of minutes. Three-dimensional detail can be amazingly faked with a good paint job. It can actually show up better and more consistently than the real thing in less than perfect lighting conditions, and it is often much faster and easier than one might think. For example, airbrush or spray paint can be misted through a stencil, and the stencil then moved a fraction of an inch at an angle, and then painted using a highlighted color. If the angle of the stencil's shift is consistent for all of the faux raised characters on the prop, observers will assume that they're seeing raised lettering that would have taken many hours to carve, especially if the prop is arranged so the painted shadows make sense with the lighting. While it may not pass muster on close-up props and scenic elements, a lot of quick and dirty detail work replacing countless hours of labor can flesh out much of a set's decoration. Haunters are also notorious for putting in a lot of detailing that is ultimately going to be completely missed by the audience. This is fully understandable. Haunters are creative people, and all artists run the risk of getting so absorbed into a project that they begin to obsess over small particulars. And this isn't all bad. An absence of features can stand out like a sore thumb, giving things a blank and unfinished look. Reality tends to have a lot of little details, so richly detailed creations often look more authentic. The key is essential detail. Not just how much, but what kind. The human brain, like a computer, has limitations on how much information it can process all at once, so we end up glossing over a lot of what we see and then mentally filling in the missed details during recall. That's why camouflage works. A guy wearing woodland camo doesn't actually look like the brushy background he's standing in front of. But if his outline is sufficiently broken up by the patchy colors, someone quickly skimming the landscape will visually glance right past him and remember seeing only leaves and shrubs where the guy was standing. The observer isn't really taking in and processing all the details, he's establishing the continuity of the pattern, and his brain is filling in for him. Overall consistency of the scene tends to keep the eye moving and discourages fixation on one spot. If people in a haunt are looking around at a scene, as long as that scene seems to be filled with stuff that belongs there and fits the context, the lab has lots of instruments, beakers, etc., or the cemetery is full of headstones and the occasional bone or body part, the less significant things sort of blend together in the background, and the bigger, more eye-catching elements will draw their attention. This is used all the time in the movies. Say there's a horde of undead skeletal warriors advancing. The guys in front will probably be animatronic puppets or CGI effects with lots of crusty rotted skin, patches of moss, and you can see between their ribs. The ones marching 10 ranks behind them might be extras wearing minimalist tattered costumes and Halloween store rubber masks, and the ones 10 ranks behind them are guys in airbrushed sweatsuits with painted ski masks or face bandanas. Distance and lighting reveals enough to maintain the rough overall pattern, but not reveal the difference in small details. But it's not just the distance that allows the filmmaker to put cruder and lower quality representations in the background. It's the fact that your attention is going to be on the rotted bony horror in the front, and only giving the most cursory of glances to the ones in back. Magicians thrive on this tool. It's misdirection. Giving the spectator something eye-catching and interesting to look at will hold his attention and make it much easier to hide or disguise something else. Misdirection can take many forms. In a static scene, big showy props with plenty of visual appeal and strong lighting will draw attention away from the more crudely finished and less lit props in the surrounding area. So it helps to distribute the most eye-popping creations around as visual focal points, so that each one is a shining star on its own, and they don't compete visually with one another. But that misdirection doesn't have to be a lavish finished prop or set piece. It just has to be something attention-getting. Projections and video screen effects, for example, never fail to make people look, if for no other reason than they're just cool to watch. In a haunt, the most attention-getting item around is anything that moves. People going through a haunted house are on edge because they expect things to come jumping out at them, so they're going to give full attention to anything they know or suspect isn't static, especially if it appears to be an actor. That's where the old prop pretending to be a guy so that the guy pretending to be a prop can ambush them while they're watching it trick comes in so handy. It works great for scares, and it works just as well as a way to make up for a scene area that isn't lavishly tricked out. Major scares and mind games can be allocated to more unfinished areas where the startled, confused, or extremely wary guests won't miss out on all the rich eye candy you worked so hard to provide for them. Spread the wealth out a bit, and you get a haunt that seems bigger and fuller than it actually is. Lighting can be a huge factor in directing people's attention. Put simply, you're not going to see something well that isn't well lit, and things that are will tend to draw your attention most. If the unlit areas are particularly dark in comparison, a well-lit object in the foreground will actually force the observer's eye to accommodate to it and decrease the eye's ability to see into the dark area. Pro haunts use this all the time. Referring back to Erebus, one scare zone we saw involved a simulated piece of machinery, some kind of quarry rock crusher or something, that advances on the crowd. The surrounding area and window that the toothy horror comes rushing toward is completely unadorned, as is the armature that the thing moves on. It's not really a set at all. Everything is matte black, the area is filled with fog, and the only light is brightly focused on the whirling death machine. The effect is brilliant, especially with the deafening industrial soundscape thundering around you. The scenario is like a surreal nightmare, where the advancing menace is the only thing people can see, and they fixate on that, at least until the scare that they're not ready for gets them from behind. The home haunter can use this as well. Once again, not only to set up scares, but to draw attention away from unfinished areas of the haunt. Not many haunters are equipped to build the so-called art haunt, that seamless work of art which obliterates all reference to the residential property it's built on. But those boring and intrusive stretches of suburbia can be left in the shadows while the illuminated attractions hold the guest's eye, and adding fog to a dimly lit area further obscures it. You might not want to have a thick fog throughout the whole haunt, and nowadays you don't have to. Many formulations of fog juice now exist for specific desired effects. When using fog in a zone-specific way, it's best to use a short-lived formulation like Froggy's Fast Dissipating Fog or Master Fog's Ground Clouds. By the time the fog actually drifts its way out of the area where it's generated, it thins out and disappears, and it doesn't fog up the entire area. As home haunters hit the home stretch in their race to get finished in time for the big show, some will inevitably become discouraged or anxious about falling behind. Relax, take a deep breath, and loosen that death grip on the design plan. A bit of optimization just might be all it takes to pull you out of the shaky end of the, oh well, I guess this'll have to do track C haunt and set you squarely in the middle of, damn, this looks all right territory. Take an inventory of all that you have, props, set pieces, actors, costumes, lights, speakers and sounds, atmospheric effects, everything. And think of different ways that they could be recombined to boost each other and be used to maximum effect. Move some things around, change actor placement, rethink the lighting scheme, come up with a couple of new scares, figure out ways of getting the haunt-goers to fear what they don't see as much as what they see. Necessity is the mother of invention. With a few tweaks and an altered version of what you're working toward, you just might surprise yourself and come up with some new things that are even cooler than what you'd originally planned. There's that ghost light shining into the theater and driving away the spirits of habit and preconception, allowing you the opportunity to improvise a fresh new performance. You very well may have a haunt that's better than you think it is. Don't panic. The visitors can take care of that themselves. From the Theater of the Mind, this is Revenant reminding one and all, stay safe, have fun, keep the ghost light burning, and most important of all, happy Halloween.
Mad props for props.
Yeah, boy! A Samhain Mad Props goes out to Diablo85, aka Jose Lopez, for his zombie containment barrel.
Hey, these things don't leak, do they?
Leak? Hell no. These things were made by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers.
The inspiration for his prop came from one of my favorite movies, Return of the Living Dead.
Oh, come on, you're shitting me, right?
He started the build with a plastic rain barrel and a used monitor. He measured and cut out the top of the barrel to fit the monitor, screwing pieces of wood inside the barrel underneath the hole with about a 1-inch overlap so that the monitor wouldn't fall through. Jose then cut out a wood frame to go over the monitor on top of the barrel to give it a metallic latch type look.
That's really rare.
Yeah. He made a box for the keypad out of scrap pieces of plexiglass. He drew the numbers onto the plexiglass with a white Sharpie marker. The keypad was backlit with a fiber optic light pad, and the only reason that he used that instead of LEDs was because he got it for free. And free is everyone's favorite flavor.
Don't fool around, you're learning.
He randomly stuck flex tubing out of the keypad box in various places. At the ends of the flex tubing, he attached half-inch pieces of pool noodles and screwed the pool noodle pieces into the barrel and the box. Jose also attached an old computer fan to the exterior of the barrel for an additional effect. He sprayed great stuff foam around the ends of the tubing to make it appear as if it was leaking.
Oh shit!
Look at that! The entire barrel and tubing was painted black and then dry brushed white. Highlights were added to the tubing and barrel with green and fluorescent green paint. Using a laptop, he looped a visual effect DVD of a zombie trying to break out of the barrel. To give the barrel a rocking effect, he used cake cylinders mounted to the bottom of the barrel, hooked up to a solenoid. The trigger is a foot pedal motion sensor attached to a peekaboo controller to fire the solenoid. Total build time was roughly about 6 hours, and the total cost was about 280 bones.
Wanna see him?
To ogle this outrageous outbreak ornamentation, visit hauntcast.net/links/mad-props.
I have seen weird things come, and I have seen weird things go.
Outstanding work, Jose. I am not worthy.
Who are you people? Hauntcast.
You gotta be fucking kidding me.
rush makes the cheeks and ears blush. Rose bouquets and ruby slippers drip like secret lovers' whispers. Kisses tickle as they trickle, tasty sparks and specks on long white necks. So drains pulsing blood, Transylvanian cocktail from the heart's thud.
Tried making your own haunt commercials, but the results just didn't cut it? Who will help you now?
Vox Noctis. Hauntcast voice talents Chris Baker and Revenant will script, voice, and produce your haunt commercials and voiceovers.
Vox Noctis. Reasonable rates that won't bleed you dry or boil your blood.
Vox Noctis.
Haunt commercials and voiceovers for haunters by haunters.
Vox-Noctis.com. VOX-NOCTIS.com.
The night has a voice.
The Charming Pot.
Greetings, my dearest darklings, and welcome back to October and the Halloween edition of the Charmed Pot. It seems to have become a Halloween tradition here in my parlor to tell an October tale in front of the hearth. So do pull up a chair and settle in, a tale I will thee tell. Many years ago, in a late October, much like this one, there were two boys. They were born barely a day apart, one in the last minute of October 30th, and one on the first minute of October 31st. They were both 13 years old and some change. They lived next door to each other in a place called Greentown, Illinois, and you would rarely see one without the other. So begins the genre-spanning story of James Nightshade and William Holloway in Ray Bradbury's Something Wicked This Way Comes. I say genre-spanning because it defies categorizing. While it is a coming-of-age story, it throws in a touch of science fiction, a bit of horror, and a cautionary tale, and it's all wrapped up into one magnificent literary work. Something Wicked This Way Comes was written by Ray Bradbury in 1962. A perhaps little-known fact about this tale is that Bradbury wrote it first as a screenplay for longtime friend Gene Kelly of Singing in the Rain fame. The working title was Dark Carnival, and it came in at 80 pages or so. When you consider that each page equals roughly 1 minute of screen time, you'll realize that it was one heck of a tight script. Bradbury presented it to Kelly, who fell deeply in love with it, and who begged Bradbury to allow him to shop it around in order to pull in some money and get it made. Sadly, when Kelly brought it back, he could only tell Bradbury that there was no money, and the project was, for the time being, shelved. Undaunted, Bradbury spent the next 3 years turning it into the beloved novel we all know today as Something Wicked This Way Comes. The book begins when an itinerant lightning rod salesman, apparently gifted with the ability to feel the coming of storms, meanders his way into town and to Jim's and Will's homes with an eye to making a sale. When the boys question him as to which house will be hit by lightning, he hesitates for a moment before naming Jim's house. He asks Jim to run and get his father to pay for the lightning rod, but as Jim's father abandoned him and his mother years before, Jim shrugs and tells the salesman there's no money with which to pay. The lightning rod salesman turns out to be a soft touch and gives Jim the lightning rod anyway. Later, Jim and Will are awakened in the night by the whistle of a train and the unmistakable sound of a carnival calliope. It is 3 a.m., which is historically an ill-fated and evil hour, as it is said to be the hour that Pontius Pilate decided Christ's fate. Like most boys of that age and living in that golden time before helicopter parents, Jim and Will hurriedly get dressed and climb down from their second-story windows. They run as hard as they can toward the sound of the train because they have both heard the faint sound of the carnival calliope entwined with the sound of the train's whistle. Will notes that the music of the calliope is like church music, but changed somehow. It gives him a chill, but it goads Jim into wanting a closer look. A carnival, they ask each other, in autumn? Excited by the prospect of a carnival coming to their small Midwestern town, the boys pelt onwards and throw themselves down close to the track to eagerly watch the train coming, hoping for a glimpse of a lion or a sideshow freak. They hope against hope to be the first to see the main tent set up before any other of the town's kids, and in fact, they are the only human eyes to see it coming. They also see that the train's engine is of an 1800s vintage, and that no one sits at the keys of the calliope. The train's whistle chills them both as it sounds, in Ray Bradbury's words, as if the wails of a lifetime were gathered in it from other nights and other slumbering years. The howl of moon-dreamed dogs, the seep of river-cold winds through January porch screens which stopped the blood, 1,000 fire sirens weeping, or worse, the outgone shreds of breath, the protests of 1 billion people dead or dying, not wanting to be dead. Their groans, their sighs, burst over the earth. The boys, who had arisen to their feet, both lose their feet and kneel, clapping their hands over their ears and screaming, tears rolling down their young faces for what reason they know not. Obviously, we, the readers, know this train is no ordinary train to come in the dark of night with black pennants flying and the screams of the damned cutting the night. But it would be a poor story if the boys didn't follow to see the carnival set up and instead stayed home until it left again, wouldn't it? The carnival is beckoned off the now stopped train by a tall man with black-gloved hands and a shadowed face. It disembarks at his command in eerie silence, with none of the noise or cat-calling or ill-tempered cursing one would expect from a myriad bunch of carnies about to set up their tents in a new town in the middle of the night. The main tent pole is brought out and erected, the smaller poles and tent pegs pounded into the protesting earth and the wires for the canvas set in place. Instead of seeing the canvas to be raised on wire supports, Jim and Will see that the canvas isn't canvas at all, but clouds torn from the sky and stitched together by an unseen hand. The boys, spooked, run for home. The next day, unable to resist its pull, the boys run out to the field to see the carnival and find it, on the surface, to look like a plain old carnival. They know from the flyers around town that the carnival is called Cougar and Dark's Pandemonium Shadow Show. Disappointed and feeling silly for their previous night's fright, they scout around. A mirror maze is set up here, a Ferris wheel there. The gypsy fortune-telling tent occupies one area, and the carousel, with an out-of-order sign, is settled into its place. All of the legs of the spider are poised to reel in the unsuspecting townspeople. The boys' teacher is the first to fall prey to the mirror maze, seeing in it a girl, looking much like she did years ago, drowning. The boys rescue her from the illusion, both feeling the chill and the sense of wrongness oozing out of the maze. Later, after closing, they sneak back to the carnival and wiggle under the canvas to see the carousel. They run afoul of both Mr. Cougar and Mr. Dark, who they discover is the illustrated man. Dark shows Jim and Will his tattooed forearms, making the tattoos dance across his skin by curling and uncurling his fists. Jim is entranced, and a connection is made between him and Dark somehow. Will's sense of self-preservation is awakened with a chill dripping down his spine, and both he and Jim give Dark false names when asked. Dark gives Jim a pass to the merry-go-round once it's fixed, with a wink and a sleight of hand magician's trick that makes the pass appear from nowhere. The boys skedaddle, and they climb a tree to watch more of the strange goings-on of the carnival. Alerted by Dark and Cougar's furtiveness that something is afoot, they hide deeper in the tree's shadows as the two strange men scan the trees for intruders before heading back into the carousel. The boys crane their necks to see inside the tent and witness Mr. Dark running the carousel backwards, with Mr. Cougar perched atop one of the carved ponies. With each revolution, Cougar becomes another year younger. By the time Dark stops it, Cougar is a boy of about their own age. He leaps from the carousel and runs into town. The boys follow, arguing back and forth about what they've witnessed. Jim says the boy must have been there all along, and Will berates him for not believing his own eyes. With the aid of the Dust Witch, the Dwarf, and the Skeleton Man and the rest of his sideshow freaks, Dark begins to take the town. The townspeople, one by one, are given their darkest, most delicate desires of their little hearts, and with each soul taken, the carnival's collection of freaks grows. They are the townspeople, twisted and turned by Dark into the embodiment of their wishes. In the end, the town is saved by the librarian, who also happens to be Will's father. The boys, now pursued by Dark in order to silence them before he gets his full complement of souls, tell Mr. Holloway everything about their experiences with the carnival and what they know about Dark's plans for their town. Holloway researches the history of the autumn carnival in the library's shelves and stacks and discovers the carnival's dark secrets in a journal written years before by his own father, the town preacher. This eventually leads to a showdown of sorts between Dark and Holloway, a man who came late to fatherhood and whose own desire is to be a younger, healthier father to his son instead of the old man he supposes himself to be.
Yes, old. Because your heart is old. Listen to it. You tell me where the boys are hiding, and I can make you young again. I could turn your years back for you to, well, let's say, 30. And speak, or you've missed it. Going. It's gone. 31. 32. 32. Year of a man's prime. Loved by many women. You might still learn to swim. 32. Going. Gone. 33. 34. 35. 35. Oh, 35. Time to father a family. Build a fortune. 35. A year when you could run up the stairs without panting for breath. 35. It's gone. 36. 37. Where are they? 38. Here, your heart. Here, my count. 39. Now. 39, a fine year. Still young. 39. Gone. Oh, 40. 40, and here you're old. Old heart.
Dad, no! Don't listen!
Dark ensnares Jim and Will and forces them to come back to the carnival with him. Back at the library, the scene of his showdown with Mr. Dark, Mr. Holloway saves himself from the clutches of the Dust Witch and follows after. As he runs through the streets of the town towards the carnival, a lightning storm is brewing and the winds which precede it whip through the town. Reaching the carnival, Mr. Holloway saves his son and heads into the mirror maze to save Jim. Knowing that the autumn people thrive on the fears and misery of the people they ensnare, he begins to laugh, and the joy of that sound destroys the maze. I won't spoil the ending for you, especially since the book and the movie have slightly different elements in each, and that affects the endings of both. Though in case you were concerned, in this story, good does triumph over evil. As with most things for which it is worth waiting, the translation of Something Wicked This Way Comes from idea to film took a long time. In this case, it took nearly 21 years for Bradbury's dream of this story made large on the big screen to come true. After Gene Kelly returned the script to Bradbury, the story languished for 10 years. In 1972, 20th Century Fox and the great movie director, Sam Peckinpah, came to Bradbury and asked for a screenplay of Something Wicked. Bradbury presented them with a 180-page screenplay, which he later admitted was just too long. Later, Paramount Studios and Kirk Douglas came along and paid for another screenplay. Bradbury cut it down to 120 pages, but even so, the producers could not all agree that they liked it. Some did, and some didn't, and Paramount passed on the project. At last, Disney Studios came along and made the film. Bradbury argued and fought with them about the story throughout the process, telling them that they were missing the important parts and warning them that the film wouldn't work. If any of you have any idea how filmmaking in Hollywood works, you won't be surprised that Disney ignored him. They screened the film for an audience for the first time, and when it was over and the lights came up, there was dead silence. The film had flopped, and it hadn't even been released yet. Bradbury's children, concerned, called him and asked him what he would do. He told them he was just waiting for Disney to call. 3 days later, the studio called and asked Bradbury if he would come in. He said, and I quote, "I sure as hell will." He went in and had a meeting with them and told them to put him in charge and to get rid of the composer and the music and rewrite the score completely with a new composer. He told them to change the narration and to let him sit down with the editors and cut the film back. They reshot and rewrote parts of the film under Bradbury, who is now the director, though he was never given the credit on screen. In 1983, $5 million and 6 months later, they had the film that we know and love today. Jason Robard starred as Mr. Halloway, with Jonathan Pryce as Mr. Dark. At last, the film actually worked, and Bradbury was happy with the result, though he said there were other things he had wanted to do with it in the future. Sadly for us, at the time of his passing earlier this year, there seemed to be no plans for any revamping of that movie to Bradbury's specifications. I personally feel that if he isn't there to supervise, it should be left well enough alone. Goodness knows, they might cast Adam Sandler in the role of Mr. Dark. I just don't think I could take that. Something Wicked This Way Comes is unique because it simultaneously sucks us back into our own childhoods and keeps us grounded in an adult worldview. We who read the story can relate to Jim's overwhelming desire to be a grown-up right now, because what child hasn't wished that at one time or another? Who of us never wished to be older when we were young? Jim is Will's shadow self, and the conflict between the two of them is not only the conflict of two friends who may grow away from each other, but of the struggle between light and dark in ourselves. Jim is convinced that Dark will let him ride the carousel forward so he can be older, and Will struggles to hold him back to being a boy and begs Jim not to ditch him. He is Jim's conscience, and Jim is Will's courage. We adults are also very familiar with the device Bradbury used so cunningly, the old adage, be careful for what you wish for, because you just might get it, because we have lived that warning at least once in our lifetimes and have the bitter regrets to show for it. Because we're adults, in theory anyway, we're able to recognize the temptations of our own personal Cougar and Dark's Pandemonium shadow show and avoid them accordingly. If we have more of Jim Nightshade in us, perhaps we're lucky enough to have a Will Holloway with us to help us avoid those little pitfalls. You can purchase both the book and the movie at Amazon.com. I recommend both for your Haunters library, as these make such wonderful pieces of October to treasure any time of year. I'll be seeing you next month, my dark darlings. Happy Samhain, Happy New Year, and bloody kisses.
This is Sergeant Sacker. Listen to me. We've traced the call. It's coming from inside the house.
Podcast Bone Phone.
Hanging with me on the bone phone is Salem's most infamous witch, Christian Day, host of the Festival of the Dead. Christian, how you doing?
Pretty good. Thanks for having me.
I've never had to work so hard to get an interviewee on the phone. You play very hard to get, my friend.
Well, it's just, this is the most insane. September and October, we're so busy in Salem preparing for all the events. We have the official Salem, which is Halloween Ball, the Vampires Masquerade, a 31-day psychic fair, a dinner, with the dead, where, called the Dumb Supper. That's actually my favorite event because people sit in silence and they have their own spirit experiences as opposed to like a seance. But we also have a number of those throughout the month. Plus I have, my two shops, Hex and Omen. And so it's very insane. There's so much preparation to do, even in September and August, where you're making sure you have enough product, because we have 500,000 tourists coming through Salem in the month of October. So I definitely run around that time.
Yeah. Well, why don't we go through, looks like there's probably about 10 different events. It already actually started the other day, October 1 through October 30th. We have the annual Psychic Fair and Witchcraft Expo. Give us a little overview of that.
The Psychic Fair, we have about 15 people that read for us every year at the Psychic Fair, and that's in the Museum Place Mall. And it's not just psychics. We also have all these little mini shops that, people come from around the country to vend with us every year with all kinds of magical jewelry and capes and, interesting stuff, the crystals and herbs and things like that. So it's all very witchy throughout the whole fair, and all kinds of interesting things to be had. And, the readers, I think some of the readers there, have been with me for many years, and they're all fantastic. We're very, very picky about who we bring, because I'm a psychic myself. I mean, I don't really read anymore because I have so many else going on. But, because of my background in that, I'm very, very particular about who sits in those chairs. And they have to have a rather expansive skill set, and I have a second psychic fair at Omen, the whole month at Omen. I also have a full roster of 10 psychics running, for the whole month. So it's very, very crazy, to try to manage it all, but it's all for the people that are coming here. Salem is the destination for psychic readings. I mean, there's almost, I can't think of anywhere on earth. I mean, I have a shop in New Orleans now at 1219 Decatur Street. And, there are a good number of psychics in New Orleans too, but nothing like Salem. I mean, this is the place, October in Salem to get a psychic reading if that's your thing. And, you're going to have some of the best ones from around the country coming in for that.
Okay, we'll move on to October 19th, the Vampires Masquerade Ball.
Well, that's sort of the darker side of the whole, Festival of the Dead. And every event in some way ties back to death. Even the psychic fair, we have mediums throughout the room that are contacting those on the other side. And, the Vampires Masquerade sort of explores the sensuality of death. The whole idea of the vampire is a metaphor for this almost sexual allure of death. You have the incubus and the succubus, and there's all kinds of centuries of mythology about this type of energy-draining creature, and so we decided to have fun with it, and so that's, a really big party. We've got this light show. It's at the Hawthorne Hotel, and it's this whole theme this year is going to be, of course, the apocalypse of 2012, so, I'm sure the vampires are going to look a little beaten upon, but it should be a fun time.
Yeah, the Hawthorne's a gorgeous hotel as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so then moving on, let's say we have October 20th, the Spectral Evidence, Ghost Hunting 101.
I call that my Scully event, because I'm a skeptic at heart. And I think a lot of people don't know that about me. And so, when I created that event with Ron Kolek of the New England Ghost Project, who's also a radio host, the idea was to help people understand scientific ways to measure spirit energy. And of course, this was before the bulk of all those ghost shows. Mm-hmm. This is the 9th year we've been doing this event. So, I believe we were around with this event before everything was a TV show and ghosts. And it's evolved, of course, because the technologies have changed. There's this whole, needing to keep up with the, the latest gadgetry and what have you, and they do, you know what I mean? So there's, if you've seen this stuff on television and you've wanted to try it in person, and have an introduction to how a lot of these things work. The spectral evidence is a great way to do it. And of course, I picked the name not only because it's the idea of evidence of the spectral, but spectral evidence was the term used in the courts of Salem in 1692 during the trials to refer to, if you could prove that you were at home with your husband and, the afflicted girl said, oh no, she visited my house in the night to pinch and scratch me, the spectral evidence would be, well, maybe she was at home, but she sent her shape to get me, so there's a whole Salem witch trials reference to that name.
On October 25th, you have Portals to the Spirit World through the Necromantium.
Yeah, that's, I'm very, very excited about that one. That's my friend, paranormal investigator Rosemary Ellen Guiley, who's written about 50-plus books on the paranormal over the last 25 years. And, she studied with Raymond Moody, who pioneered the psychomantium, the idea of using black mirrors to communicate with the spirit world, which was in turn based on the old Greek necromantiums, temples of the dead, which you can still see today, in Greece. And there's places where you can crawl into these holes and have this dark experience where you experience the spirits. And so this whole, it's a very limited, only 25 people can go to this event. And there's still, I think there's a handful of tickets left. They've selling in advance because of the fact that it's so different and compelling. And so she's going to be taking people through this journey of black mirrors and spirit contact, and it's really incredible. I've had a little bit of an inside view on some of what she's been preparing on, and I mean, she's going to really take people on a journey. And one of the things that is very important to me with this festival is that it's not just, you've got your seances, of course, you've got your psychic readings, but there's a point to where that can be all about what someone's telling you. And even if it rings true to you, it's not you. I want people to have the experience. Part of the point of an event like Portals to the Spirit World is that people have the experience themselves. And that's very important to me. That people are able to see with their own hearts and minds that there is another world there.
Yeah, until you've had some kind of an experience, I think you can, even if you sort of believe that there's something there, something else out there, there's spirits, there's, another realm, you don't really, until you've experienced something, I think that's when it really hits home. Then everything changes. Then you don't just somewhat believe it, now you truly believe it. At least that's the way I feel. That's the way I kind of came across it. I've always believed that there were ghosts, but never until I had an experience one time in Boston at this old comedy club where it had been shut down, and the manager was robbed and shot, and his spirit was supposedly still there. I had encountered some really paranormal activity there that was just out, that just completely changed my view towards the paranormal and the spirit world. It's one of those things. But okay, anyway, and I guess more about me. On October 26th, my birthday, is the official Salem Witches Halloween Ball.
That's really the pinnacle of what we're doing. I mean, the Witches Ball, the first Witches Ball was done by Laurie Cabot in 1972, I believe, and that was the first one in the world. And there was, it's the late 90s, mid 90s, she stopped doing it, and then my best friend Sean started to do it, and then he asked me to be part of it in 2002, and when he passed away in 2007, I took it over as a solo. And it's just, there's so much history there. People go from all over the world to come to the Witches Ball, and it's not just for witches. It's for people to be with witches and see, party with us, so to speak. And there's, and it's not just a party, because we have psychic readings are included in the ticket price, and there's all kinds of appetizers passed around and cheese trays and all that kind of, because this Hawthorne has really fantastic food. And there's a ritual and dancing, and we have the Dragon Ritual drummers, and there's 2 floors, so there's concerts upstairs with Kellyanna and then Jenna Green, so there's 2 different concerts, plus a drumming, once the Dragon Ritual drummers finish in the ballroom, they go upstairs for, another hour to do a whole drumming circle for people to experience that who haven't. And Utu and the Dragon Ritual drummers, they are some of the most talented percussionists, and so, it's just, there's so many variations to that event, and so the takeaway can be different for everyone depending on what they choose to do. Some people like to sit out in the lobby and look at all the costumes. It's whatever compels you, and that's, I mean, I've always sought to make that a very multi-tiered event, so that if your idea is to sit in the ballroom at a table the whole night and just drink, some people do that, and they come every year, and I'm thinking, well, they never dance, they never go, but
they're people watchers,
right? But that's their thing, So whatever your takeaway is what you get out of it. But I mean, we have DJ Adam Baum, who is at both the Vampire and Witches Ball, but the music set is very different. At the Vampire Ball, it's more industrial goth. At the Witches Ball, it's a mix of sort of goth and pop and, dance music, classic Halloween songs, stuff like that. I mean, it's really just an incredible party. And my energy, I'm the MC of it all, so I'm, on high gear the whole night. I don't really sit down and, I'm always milling about, up there doing rituals or announcing people. And, most of the night I'm taking pictures. People are like, can I have my picture with you? So I pretty much imposing half of the night, but it's a lot of fun, for me too, because I feel like this is a time where we get to celebrate the dead. And that's part of what that event is. I mean, Halloween is a death holiday in many ways. To the Celtic people, it was called Salem, or Summer's End, and it was a time when things were getting, the harvests were dying, and so people thought of things like death. And it really is a composite Halloween of a number of events about deaths throughout the year. The Japanese have the Bon Festival in July, but they light these candles at the doorway almost like a jack-o'-lantern, and then they send them out on the water. So you find symbols of all these other cultures in Halloween. And of course it's October 31st, but it contains cultural memories of festivals of the dead from throughout the world and throughout history.
Okay, moving on to October 27th, we have Conjuring Spirits, a Night of Necromancy.
Well, that would be my event, and I'll be teaching that. I generally don't teach in October for the same reason it's hard to get me on a radio show.
Yeah, you're just a little busy.
Well, I put out a lot of fires. I mean, I was with 2 sick calls that decided to email me today. It's crazy because I have managers and they don't seem to contact them, And necromancy is really one of the most oldest practices in the world. And it's one of the most forbidden practices in the Bible, but it really is the predecessor to mediumship. The modern mediumship that you see on TV, that, the spiritualist church really pioneered in the 1800s. Its predecessor is necromancy, which of course is mediumship, but it's a much more complex, ritualized, ceremonialized form of it. So with necromancy, you are working to hear the messages of the spirit world, but you're also working to interact with them and build relationships with them, which takes it beyond mediumship, because whereas with what I would call oracular necromancy, which is a form of mediumship, you conduct these ceremonies to connect with spirits who then give you messages from the other side. However, you can take it beyond that in that you may build relationships with the spirits of your loved ones that they will offer to help you in times of need. So it becomes a form of magic. So in other words, you ask for help where you need it. I mean, I published a book through Weiser in October of 2011 called The Witch's Book of the Dead, and it's now going into its 3rd printing. A lot of what's in this class is in the book, but you're going to get that hands-on, literally, because you'll have a human skull there and all kinds of strange things, to work with. And the idea is to build those relationships and to call on the people that can help you where needed. I mean, I often say the Virgin Mary is busy and ISIS has better things to do. But your grandmother will help you on the other side. But you also got to, be careful who you call on. I say if you're trying to get a date, you don't call on your aunt that was a nun. You call on your cousin that was a hooker. And kidding. But, it's the idea is that you build these relationships with those people who truly cared about you in the spirit world, because if they're still around, they'll still want to help. And they want something in return as well, and part of what they want is that joy of life once lived and communion with those they cared about in life. And so it's definitely a mutual relationship. And so that's, Conjuring Spirits, a Night of Necromancy on the 27th, that's what that's all about. We'll cover ancestral altars, oracular necromancy, messages and from spirit. I mean, it's all going to be in there.
October 28th, you have 2 events. You have the morning tea and then the dumb supper.
Well, they're sort of 2 sides of a very similar nickel. the same nickel, really. The dumb supper is not for stupid people. It is a dinner served in complete silence. It's a very old custom, and everyone sits in silence during the dinner, and the dinner's served backwards, and the silverware is all reversed, and the glass is on the wrong side. Everything is shifted in some way so that our consciousnesses can shift into the other world. And my favorite thing about that event, because it's designed so that the spirits come to visit you in the silence. And I always get these people, I generally call them the husbands, the wives drag them along, they're standing in the corner during the intro, sipping their drinks, and what the hell am I doing here? They're usually the skeptics, they don't believe in it, and so on and so forth. And every year I will get these people coming up to me saying, well, my wife dragged me to this, and I thought this was dumb, literally. They'll have experiences of seeing their grandparents dancing across the ballroom floor. People have smelled their best dog, or the uncles have put their arms on their shoulders, or grab their hand, and and these are the people that don't believe. You always expect that somebody that goes in with a true expectation may convince themselves that they had an experience they didn't. And the skeptical side of me understands that. But when you have people coming up to you that went in there just, oh, this is crap, there's no way this is true, and then they have this experience. Well, there's something to be said for that, and the whole point of the dumb supper is to shift into that other world for the experience. Now, on the reverse end of that is the morning tea, which I believe is at 10:30 in the morning at the Hawthorne. And the power of that event is you're making that connection to spirit by sharing the memories and energies of those you love. And so where the dumb supper is in silence, the morning tea is a 3-course Victorian-style tea where everybody's, dressed in finery and black, and, they're all sharing these memories of their loved ones through spoken eulogies. People will stand up and they'll talk about people that they cared about. There's a Book of the Dead, which is basically this giant scrapbook where people put in memories of their departed. We've had everything from printed eulogies to newspaper articles to love letters to suicide notes. I mean, people have put all kinds of things into this Book of the Dead. And so it's there for people to share. It's all about remembering those loved ones, and by doing so, it draws their energy in. So again, you're making that spiritual connection. And they also do tea leaf readings, of a spiritual nature. So they're looking for connections to the spirit world through the tea leaves. So it's really a very unique event where we didn't create the dumb supper. This was entirely created by us. And
I guess moving on to the big nights, the night of nights, October 31st, you have the Salem Witches Magic Circle.
And that's at 5 o'clock on Salem Common. And we usually get about 500 or so people there. And it's a fantastic event. It's all about connecting to spirit again. And because there's so many tourists wandering around that night, we'll always get a lot of people who have no idea what real witchcraft is. They have no idea, that we're a positive belief system, that, we're healers and spiritists and helping people to, connect with their own spirit and magic. And so this circle is very much designed for a broad audience. A lot of times you'll go to these public witchcraft rituals and you kind of feel like you're a spectator to something you don't understand. It's all very esoteric and cryptic, and that's not really what this is about. This circle is about creating a magical connection for everyone who is there to relate to the spirits of those they love. We call out the names of the spirits. We have the dragon ritual drummers there again because percussion is a very powerful way to draw the energy of spirits to you. So it becomes a sacred place there on Salem Common.
In the magic circle, is it what you would expect? Would there be a big bonfire in the middle and everyone's going to go around? Is that how it works?
Well, they don't allow a bonfire,
okay.
On the Salem Common with good reason.
Yeah.
There's too many drunk tourists that night. We'd have a few witches burned at the stake. No, but there's us in the center. And some circles you'll go to and you'll see these witches standing in a circle looking at each other, and you're on the outside. Everyone at this circle is facing out to the outer circle that's facing in. So we're all connecting back, and people are participating with music and calling out the names of loved ones and clapping and what have you. It's all about connecting to spirit.
So, Christian, where can people get tickets for the balls? Where can they find your shops?
You can get tickets to all of these events at festivalofthedead.com, and you can visit my websites and my shops. I've got salemhex.com and omensalem.com, and Hex is at 246 Essex Street in downtown Salem, right on the red line, and Omen is at 184 Essex Street. If you want to visit my website, it's just a basic launch page to everything else I do. It's christianday.com. And you can learn about my book. You can see some of the YouTube videos. So there's a ton going on.
And then they could also go to festivalofthedead.com as well?
Right, and that you can buy the tickets there, and you can also call 800-595-4TIX. I believe it's 4849, but it's 4TIX.
All right, Christian, I hope the rest of the month goes a little bit smoother than the last couple of days for you.
Yeah, well, it's that crazy time,
Yeah, you got to take it, right? So, hey, it was a pleasure. This was a fantastic conversation with you. I had a lot of fun. I learned a little bit too. And happy Halloween.
Thank you so much. Have a great night.
Trick or treat.
Hauntcast.
Flappy Bat!
Flappy Bat, flapping at Halloween bonfires great. Have you caught any moth fluttering to its fate? wings, guide your nocturnal flight past the hills, sweeping chills with your fawn by moonlight.
Access Halloween.
Hello, my fellow haunters and Halloween fanatics. Your resident gravedigger Grimlock here. Welcome to the October edition of Access Halloween. Hold on 1 second. I just got to go answer the door really quick. Oh, geez, is it Halloween already? Oh, guys, I'm so sorry, but I'm all out of candy. I didn't even go buy any candy yet. You guys don't look very good. Look, hey, I'm sorry. I gotta go back inside. I got this whole segment to record. It's for Hauntcast, and hey, stop grabbing on my leg. Hey, guys, stop, quit it. Oh, jeez. Goes to show you what happens when you forget all about Halloween and you're slacking on your props and you're not buying candy for these kids. I mean, they'll take a bite right out of you instead. Well, I hope that really doesn't happen to me this year, that I don't slack, I don't fall behind, and I don't have anything to show to the neighborhood kids this year. I'm trying to pump out my props. I hope that you guys are doing it too. But in the meantime, try to take in all the things that are going on in this cool month of October. And I have a list of stuff that's going on in and around all different areas all over the place. So I'm going to run down that list for you guys really quick, just in case there's something in your area that you might want to check out to get into the Halloween spirit. Now, there's a lot on this list, so I'm going to move through them rather quickly, but I will post them all up on the Hauntcast website just in case you want to check out the links for all these websites if any of these are in your area and you want to go to them. I'm going to start off with Cinema Wasteland. It's a movie and memorabilia expo. It's on October 5th through the 7th in Strongsville, Ohio at the Holiday Inn, 15471 Royalton Road. Celebrity guests, movies, vendors, and more. On the same weekend in Denver, Colorado, we have the Mile High Horror Film Festival, which is a showcase for independent horror films from around the world. Sounds pretty cool. And rounding out the 5th through the 7th is the Rapture Horror Expo in Mesa, Arizona at the Mesa Convention Center. This is a first-year convention. It focuses on horror, comics, haunts, paranormal, and parties. It also includes special guests Tony Todd and Jake Busey. In Washington, D.C., from October 10th through the 18th is Spooky Movie. It's at the AFI Silver Theater. This is in Washington, D.C. It's an international horror film festival. We have the Erie Horror Fest, October 11th through the 14th in Erie, Pennsylvania, at the Warner Theater. This is a combo film festival and horror convention. Guests will include the cast members from the Dawn of the Dead. October 12th to the 13th is the Everybody Dies Horror Film Festival. This is in Bray, California at the Bray 5 Cinemas, 453 South Associated Road. This is the best in horror shorts, trailers, and feature films displaying everything from brain-chomping zombies to knife-wielding crazy killers. October 12th through the 14th in Worcester, Massachusetts is Rockin' Shock. It's a big annual horror convention and concert combo event. October 13th is Monster Fest in Chesapeake, Virginia, Chesapeake Central Library, 298 Cedar Road. This is an annual free convention with vendors, panel discussions, special guests, a costume contest, trick-or-treating for all kids in costume, and a horror movie marathon. October 13th in Phoenix, Arizona at the Madcap Theaters, Tempe, is the Phoenix FearCon Film Festival, horror film festival with contests, panels, vendors, and celebrities. October 13th and 14th in San Antonio, Texas is MonsterCon at the Wonderland Mall of the Americas. Guest artists, writers, vendors, zombie shooting contest, a little ghoulie play area, gaming, and so much more. If you're ready for 9 nights of horror, sci-fi, action, and cult movies, then October 18th through the 26th, you want to check out the Toronto After Dark Film Festival. This is taking place in Toronto, Canada, Bloor Cinema, 506 Bloor Street West. October 19th through the 20th is the South Texas HorrorCon in McAllen, Texas at the McAllen Convention Center, 700 Convention Center Boulevard. Celebrity guests, panels, FX makeup tutorials, ghost hunting experts, live tattooing, and piercing at the HorrorCon in South Texas. Check out the Dark Carnival Film Festival, October 19th to the 21st in Bloomington, Indiana. The Sundance of Horror, featuring live entertainment, merchandise, vendors, celebrity guests, and film screenings. ZombieCon, October 19th through the 21st at Fort Myers, Florida, Harborside Convention Center. Last year, they were boasting 20,000 attendees. They had a huge zombie street party. And this year, which is their 7th, they are moving to a weekend-long convention. So that's just extra zombie fun with vendors, arts, and all sorts of events at ZombieCon. The Macabre Fair, a grim gathering, October 19th through the 21st in the Rockville Center, New York, Best Western Mill River Manor. It's a celebration of all things Halloween. There's vendors, a dozen live performers, panels, horror movies, fashion shows, costume contests, dancing, and various celebrity guests. The Monster Bash Movie Marathon, October 20th in Ligonier, Pennsylvania. It's the Ligonier Theater, 208 West Main Street. Movies on the big screen all day long. Vendor floor plus live theater. The New Orleans Horror Film Festival in October 25th through the 28th in on Bourbon, 541 Bourbon Street. This is the second annual Horror Film Festival, committed to celebrating the craft and the art of the genre filmmaking at its best. Monster Palooza, October 26th through the 28th in Burbank, California. The Burbank Airport Marriott, the Art of Monsters convention. Come to Halloween with over 200 vendors, special guests, costumes, and contests. Let's not forget Chiller Theater, October 26th through the 28th in Parsippany, New Jersey, my neck of the woods. A huge number of guests every time, and it's a long-running convention. Lots of cool toys, lots of cool models at the Chiller Theater. And last but surely not least is Boobs of the Dead. Yes, I said Boobs of the Dead. This is taking place all through October on Fridays and Saturdays in Chicago. It's a zombie-themed burlesque show. It sounds really cool. Boobs of the Dead. Well, my home brethren, that about wraps up this edition of Access Halloween. For the links to all these conventions and events that you just heard, you can please stop by hauntcast.net. You're always welcome to come by grimlockmanor.blogspot.com. I hope you have a happy and scary Halloween. And this is Grimlock, keeping my fingers on the pulse of all things scary.
The Prop Shop.
Greetings and salutations from the sun-blasted desert that I live in called Las Vegas, Nevada, where the air is always hot, the women are always cold, and the beer is always flowing. This is Denny, a.k.a. Den Haunt.
Denny, the women are always cold to you.
I see how it's going to be. Hey, by the way, guys, in case you didn't notice, guess who just walked into the shop? My friend G-host Chris Baker. And I use the term friend loosely. What's going on, Chris? Hey, watch your step over there, buddy. I got dog shit in the floor and sawdust in the corners.
What are we going to be talking about this month? Because I wanted to jump in. I need to know I need to really pick your brain on a few last minute details on my haunt. I get the yard set up. I just started to add out some of the lighting, and I guess it's all about those finishing touches, the last minute details. So yeah, I think that's what we really are going to get into this month. Is that correct?
Absolutely. We call those the last looks. And as you can see from looking around this crap hole, I am not only behind in unpacking my shop and running behind and getting my cemetery set up, but I got repairs and details out the wazoo to take care of. As you saw from walking in the door, I got the cemetery going outside. I got the fence around that. Problem is, I got holes, cracks, chipped paint. I got things that people are tripping over. This is kind of the beginning of the fun place for me.
You like the devil in the details, so they say.
The devil is always in the details. I'm glad you used that term, but not so glad at the same time, because you stole my freaking thunder.
Ah, that's what when you have me on your segment, you know I'm going to steal your thunder. That's the way it works.
You say that like I asked.
Dude, you didn't want to edit this thing. You were being a lazy prick, and you're like, yeah, I'll come back and do the show as long as I don't have to edit anything or write a script anymore. Or what just bullshit through the whole thing. I'm like, oh God, that's what it's gonna turn into a nightmare. Anyway, so we need to stay on point, okay? Because,
all right.
So let's focus. Let's start talking about the details, the last looks.
So I guess probably the best place to start would be the prop repair. I mean, as you can see by looking around the table right here, I've got tombstones, I've got fencing that needs fixed, I've got cylinders that aren't doing what they're supposed to do. You see that pile of coil of wires over in the corner? Well, that belongs somewhere. You see that tubing up on the wall? Yeah, that's actually supposed to be connected to that cylinder over there. So where we are now is, as with most haunters, is you get your stuff kind of out there, you start stepping outside, you start setting your lights, and you learn from there where you need to go, what you need to fix. Having said that, let's start with the foam work. So all you guys out there, you know that foam is near and dear to my heart. So I've got to repair this tombstone right here. This one actually cracked in half. So there's a couple of different things that we can do to start with this, and I hope this is helpful out there. I'm going to take spray foam, which, by the way, for those who've listened for a while, know that crack was spawned in the 7th level of hell, and once you get it on you, it lives on you. But having said that, I digress. I'm going to spray foam on there to seal it. And that's going to lock the two pieces of foam together. For those of you guys who haven't tried that out there, the truth of the matter is, if you want to stick two pieces of foam together, spray foam's the way to go because it basically makes it as strong as the original piece. So I'm going to spray this foam on there now. Chris, you want to give me a sound effect? Oh, shit, I got some on me. I'm not talking about the foam.
That's what she said. But
all right, so you got to stick those two together. Now, the best stuff as far as spray foam goes is going to be the low expanding foam. You got a lot of different kinds of spray foams. I mean, Chris, when you and I started this a long time ago, there was the great stuff expanding foam. Well, now you've got fire-rated foam. You've got low expanding foam. You've got the orange bottles, the blue bottles, the black bottles. What we're going to use here is technically the blue bottle, which basically means it's a little bit flexible and it doesn't expand as much. So we stuck this tombstone together with that. I'm going to tape it with some duct tape, and I'm going to hold it together for about 4 or 5 hours until it solidifies. Once that happens, and you can do this not just with tombstones, but anything made from foam, then you cut the foam away, and you're ready to go. That stuff is as solid now and as strong as the two pieces of foam before they were broke.
I've been using that stuff now almost as an adhesive for any type of foam work. So I had to rebuild my mausoleum. I only had foam on a wooden frame, a 2x4 frame. I realized that I needed to have some kind of plywood, so I went the cheap route, picked up some Luan, and I sprayed that low expanding blue great stuff foam all over the back to stick it on the wall. That shit sticks amazing. Look how it sticks to the hair on your arm and everywhere else on your body. You can get a lot of distance out of that can using it as a way to just as an adhesive on its own. So
I use it all the time. But by the way, just throwing this out there to you as well as your audience, not to be used as a lubricant. It's very slick at first, but that changes quickly.
Did somebody actually contact you about using it as a lubricant, or is that something that you tried to do?
You don't remember that?
Don't tell me you tried to do it.
You'd be amazed at the phone calls I get. I'll blame it on JT.
That kind of lubricant. Anyway, you fucking jackass.
Moving on. All right, so let's say, for instance, you got the spray foam on there, but now you got this big crack or the seam there, and you want to get rid of the seam. My go-to substance above and beyond anything else is 5-minute drywall mud. Now you can get it in 5 minutes, you can get it in 20 minutes, you can get it in an hour and a half drywall mud. But the great stuff about this, especially about foam, but it works with wood and everything else, I might add, is you mix up a batch. Literally, you've got about 4 or 5 minutes to get it on. It dries to a sandable state in probably 15 minutes. You sand it down. You throw some paint over it. You can never see that anything ever went wrong. And like I said, that'll work for anything foam, anything wood, basically any seam at all. It's great stuff. Now, let's say that you've got a piece that not only do you need to seal the seam on, but you need it to never fall apart again forever. Bondo. My friends, for those
ever
and ever. Bondo.
Neil,
let me say it again. Bondo. Fantastic freaking stuff. And let me tell you why. For those of you who aren't up on your Bondo knowledge, they make a Bondo for everything. We're talking, you got a crack in your drywall? There's a Bondo for that. You got a crack in your driveway? There's a Bondo for that. Let's say, for instance, you're replacing a doorknob and you strip the screw. There's actually a Bondo that you can go in, fill your screw head, make your crease, and when it dries, it's strong enough to pull that screw out again. Bondo is fantastic. Problem is, you have to be able to sand it. That makes it a little bit challenging on a foam project because the foam's going to sand away before the Bondo does. But for a cover-up, it can't be beat. You can buy it by the gallon, by the quart, whatever. You mix it with a little bit of catalyst. Done, and done. It's a very underutilized product. All right, Chris, so we talked about the repairs. As you can see from this side of my shop, this side has all the broken crap. Don't ask me. By the way, how does that shit happen? I gotta know. Everything looks decent when you pull it out of your yard on Halloween. What the hell happens between October and September of the following year where everything breaks? Can you tell me that?
You move from New Hampshire to Las Vegas. Is that what happens?
Well, that's what happened this year. How many repairs did you make in your shop?
This year was not so much of adding more. It was going back and retooling and refining what I already had.
We had the same year. My year, I actually have it written down as the title. It's the year of the repair and recover. I took basically everything that I did that I really liked in the past, moved it forward to this millennium.
My tip for the prop shop this month is all about leak seal. Leak seal, you can buy it. It's made by Rust-Oleum. You can get the other version that they sell on the infomercials, but it's almost twice as much for a can. Buy Leak Seal. It's $10 a can. It's a spray paint style can, and it doesn't get much mileage per can. You can do I don't even know how much of a couple of square feet of room that you can completely cover with it before you're going to need another can. I mean, maybe you can get about 4 square feet. Not really too sure. When I did, if you look at my yard haunt, you can see that the tree that I had out there, that haunted tree, I call him Woody. It took me about 6 cans of leak seal to cover that entire prop. But I've tried urethane, spar urethane, and every year he gets damp. Like last year we had a storm rip through here, and it wasn't that the storm did as much damage as the water. He just became kind of waterlogged. Leak seal, I put him out there. It's already been raining for 3 or 4 days. I covered Gordy, my pumpkin creature, complete head to toe with leak seal. And this year they're friggin' leak proof. They are friggin' locked solid. And I painted back over that, and they look fantastic. And this year I actually feel like I could leave them out there all year in the pouring rain, and nothing's going to happen to them. So check it out. Especially if you have paper mache out there, just leak seal the sucker.
I remember this rain you talk about. That's where water actually falls from the sky. Not where I live, brother. But I do tell you what we protect ourselves with around here. Fiberglass resin. You can buy it from Home Depot. You're looking at about $20 a gallon. With your Gordy, I love your Gordy, by the way. You could cover your entire Gordy with a can of fiberglass resin, cost you $25, $30 with the catalyst, and I guarantee you it would be rock proof at that point. Because I know how the kids like to come by and throw rocks at your crap. All right, so let's move over to paint. Here's one thing I've learned over the years. It's not so much the paint that you put on, because we all go to the Home Depot and buy the $5 a can screw-up crap off the shelf.
Oops.
I love the Oops shelf. My favorite shelf. I find myself shopping there like women shop in shoe stores. I buy it whether I freaking need it or not. It doesn't matter what color it is. Because someday I'm going to need that goddamn color, and now I got it. I got a garage full of paint, as you can see. So what we do from there is it's not so much the paint, it's the texture. You see this can? This is spray texture. It's for ceilings. A lot of times, you just got to break up a clean surface, because a clean surface isn't what haunted attractions are all about. You know, it's not what your home haunt's all about. So if I spray this texture on there first, give me a sound effect.
Was
now
it the right one?
Well, close enough. I liked it. But now it's doing.
I'm so excited about this segment.
I know. Now it's doing its thing, and as soon as it's dry, it takes just a couple of minutes. I can paint it. And it's got a completely different feel or look. You remember the old days we used to get handfuls of freaking spray foam in gloves and rub it on our props? By the way, that also water seals. And it gave it a texture, which gave it a value. If you took your Funkins and you got handfuls of spray foam and you rub it on your Funkins and then paint those black and then dry brush, and you get this really great effect. Well, this acoustical ceiling spray does kind of the same thing. It's all about texture. The next thing you see over here is flat black paint. Not only is this good for giving depth and adding detail, but anything in your yard haunt is going to disappear once it's painted with this flat black paint. If you're one of those guys who wants to look better in the nighttime, anything you paint with this will disappear, no matter what lighting you have on it. In the dark, it goes away. Another thing with the paint, you see how I've done this here, where I've got the brown? And then I've come over top of that with another brown, and I dry brush that brown, and now I'm flicking this brown on with a paintbrush. Multiple levels of different shades are going to give you depth. I mean, there's very little stuff in nature. It's just the little stuff we do. That's what we call it, second looks or last looks. This is right before production. We want to get out there and we want to take the stuff that we spent the whole year building and make it look as good as possible.
Let's talk lighting.
Lighting is you can put hours and hours into a prop. You can put tons of money and hours into a paint job. But you know, how many times have you painted a prop? You went and put your light on it, it washed out all your paint.
Every time.
Yep. So
and that's why I wonder, why do I spend 20 hours trying to paint something that is going to wash out immediately once I hit it with a blue light or a yellow light or something?
You know, that's one of the things I've noticed. I mean, there's two different kinds of haunters. I mentioned it earlier. So we've got daytime haunters and nighttime haunters. And a lot of times the daytime haunters look okay at night, but those who want to be purely nighttime haunters, their stuff doesn't look very good during the day. Well, the fact of the matter is, it doesn't really matter, because if you don't care how it looks during the daytime, well, at night it's going to be just fine. And that's where we talked before about the paint, throwing the flat black in there. Well, if you have a flat black background during the daytime, people are going to drive by and say, what the hell is that? But if you only care about what people at night think or on the big day, at that point, it doesn't really matter. You can throw any light towards that and it's fine. So I guess the point I'm driving at is, if you're going to be lighting your prop primarily for the evening time, don't worry as much about the paint, because the color can be used to hide your flaws. It can be used to create a mood. If you want something to be, particularly spiky, you can add some red. If you want it soothing and ghostly, you add the blues or the greens. It's amazing what light can do to both screw up your paint job and also fix your haunt.
When you're outdoors, if you're not trying to highlight a small specific area, I think the floodlights are the way to go. Just blast it, because you can get a much bigger area. This year I put the blues back on the graveyard, and I used a yellow spot. I picked up a couple of yellow spots. One hits the cornholio, my corn stalker in the corn scene. The other one hits Gordy, the tree, all the pumpkins, the sign, and so on the both corners I have the yellows coming out. Everything in the forefront is being hit and illuminated. So Gordy's popping out, Sam in the background's popping out, all the pumpkins that are dangling from the trees. I was trying to hit these individually, and it was way too much work. Now I'm realizing that if you're trying to hit multiple props and make those pop and stand out, Go for the big spotlights, and if you want the mini LEDs, you use those for the accents and the highlight areas. Am I wrong?
All right, so I kind of agree with you. For instance, if I was going to light a cemetery, which I think is probably the thing that most home haunters are challenged with lighting, you want to have a big, huge area, and you want to light as much of that as you can with as little electricity as possible. I would use maybe a blue or a green. But where there's value in spots is on top of that wash, because that's what you're getting. When you throw a green spot, you're washing everything that's kind of becoming the same color, and then it has the same character. If you come back with the spots on top of that, now you're highlighting that, especially if you put the spots at an angle. So maybe you've got a cemetery wall, a wash in blue, and say you've got a scarecrow behind that. So I might come up on the scarecrow with a green or a yellow spot that won't get anywhere but the scarecrow, but the rest of the place is wash in blue. Do you follow me with what I'm saying?
I gotcha.
So I think that's the value in using both. So I've been tripping over those same damn extension cords for a week now, and it came to, I guess, my realization. I've got a 7-year-old daughter right now, and she's going to be tripping over that same stuff. Now, like we talked about earlier, I've got a half a mile or more of extension cords crisscrossing my yard. So what I've been kind of thinking about recently is how do I make this a little safer for the kiddos? I mean, the drunks I never cared about, but now I have kids. So it's all about either gaff or duct taping your lines to your sidewalk. Be sure during last looks to get out there. Anywhere in your yard, you may have a line sticking up. What I do is I take a clothes hanger, I clip about a 7-inch section out of it, I bend it in half, and then tap it into the ground, right over the wire. This will take the wire directly to the ground. You do this about every 10 or maybe 8 or 10 feet. You're fine. There's no trip danger anymore. The other thing is I've got more pneumatics this year than I probably ever had.
Which is what, 2?
Hey now. Hey now.
Easy now.
Easy. Hold on there, Turbo. But what I've been kind of particularly sensitive to this year is checking the connections. Do I have a solid, quick disconnect there? Is everything in good disrepair because it hasn't been used in a couple of years, or it's been stored in a 145 freaking degree oven in my garage in Las Vegas, Nevada. So I've been kind of thinking about that kind of stuff. So keep your lines, your electrical lines duct taped to the sidewalk. Keep your electrical lines pinned into the dirt outside. Make sure that your connections between your electrical lines is solid. That kind of stuff.
And
keep it safe.
Yeah, and keep your hoses in your pants.
Keep your hose on the corner or in your pants. All right, Chris. Well, hey, you know what? That's really great. You see where I'm at right now. I'm up to my knees in crap. It was good to see you, but get the freak out of here so that I can get busy. For now, this is Den Hunt from the Prop Shop saying it's nice to buy a prop, but it's a hell of a lot more fun to build one. I'll see you next month, but until then, stay safe and stay scary.
Hauntcast.
Souling Song.
sun. Waning and waning, the dark has begun. La la, la la, la 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 la, la 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 la. All this night as boundaries untie, visitors friendly and frightful stop by. Up with your mask and down with your feet, marching and marching to lead out the fleet. La la, la la, la 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 la. How about this dwelling? Its offerings are compelling, with drinks and cakes and porridge, and cherries and berries from storage. Rattles at your door, don't be scared, but give us some more. A pantry or a fleshy might delight by no firelight. Solar cakes, we come hunting for solar cakes. We are dead, but like result, on this night we'll take your bread. And while you're out of your abode, hiding fires are sawing off. Think of us and somebody, as we are your two shall be. Solar cakes, we come hunting for solar cakes. We are dead, but like result, on this night we'll take your bread. And while you're out of your abode, hiding fires are sawing off. Think of us and somebody, as we are your two shall be. La la, la la, la 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 la
You're going in the wrong direction!
All right, here we all are. It's October, and as the Great Pumpkin draws nigh, the Terror Turnpike rides yet again. I'm Eric Weister, and for this special Halloween edition, we're off to Atlanta, Georgia, to visit Netherworld, one of the biggest and most eye-popping of all the major haunts across the country. Their website is www.fearworld.com, and they actually have 2 Facebook pages. By way of their credentials, in the last few years, Haunt World magazine has rated them the #1 haunted house in America. Fangoria oozed tons of praise all over them. They've been featured on the Today Show, CNN, The Early Show, USA Today, The Travel Channel, America Haunts, Cartoon Network, MTV Clutch, and even Good Morning America did a piece on them. Okay, I know what you're all thinking. Are they really that great? We've been to see it twice, and that had a big effect on this review. I've got to be honest, based on our initial visit, the answer would have been a resounding no. We didn't have the greatest of experiences the first time around. At the time, we got caught between two parties. One in front of us that were dragging their feet through every exhibit, and another behind us who were pushing us forward faster and faster. It literally killed every last surprise, startle, and scare. I barely had a chance to take anything in, and it got really messed up, and people in both of these groups were behaving like idiots. Very annoying. Take heed, this will get you strangled around us. Fast forward 2 years later, and we're in Atlanta again, visiting family and friends, and we decided to give it another shot. This time around, it's much later in the evening, and the lines are starting to fade. Lisa, myself, and an old close friend take a nice leisurely stroll through the wonders that are Netherworld. Ah, now that was more like it. We finally got to take it all in, and I must say their reputation is well earned. There are two sections to Netherworld: the main and secondary attractions. The main being the larger, more traditional haunt, while the secondary spot goes more for the blood and gore fans. These guys know a thing or two about making monsters. You'll bump into every creature you can imagine, and then some you probably couldn't. And they're just beautifully developed and rendered. Vampires, ghouls, zombies, mummies, werewolves, all sorts of creatures roam these halls, and the sets are just amazing. Between homegrown craftsmanship to the custom designed and built, this thing is just terrific eye candy from the start to finish, with all sorts of surprises along the way. Things just have the habit of just coming out of the walls at you. Hint, hint. Gotta bring up their Vampire's Crypt section. Sorry, that's my universal monsters love seeping out again, and Lugosi would be proud. I have to compliment the owners of Netherworld for their relentless drive to annually update their attractions, thematically and visually. The layouts of both haunts change every year, and they are always adding new rooms, creatures, and surprises. This can't be cheap or easy, and it really speaks to the dedication to their craft. Some things to be watching for: a terrific hall of mirrors which literally made me dizzy the first time around. Good luck getting out of that thing anytime soon. A stunning animatronic rock monster. I mean, this dude is huge. And their vortex tunnel. Granted, most haunts have one of these spinning vertigo nightmares, but this one is on the extra long side. I happen to love the effect, and I have this annoying habit of stopping about halfway through, blocking the line, and watch everybody fall over and puke. Yes, I'm twisted and evil like that, I know. There's something very upbeat about Netherworld. I can't place my finger on it, it just has a good humored atmosphere to it. Maybe it's the line actors, the general feel of the haunt. It's hard to pinpoint. I think the best word I can use to describe this place is mischievous. And all I can add to that is, see it for yourself. Additionally, there's a definite channeling of the spirit of Disney's Haunted Mansion here. I won't add much more to that, aside from saying Netherworld doesn't rip off anything from the mansion. However, they certainly understand Disney's atmosphere and do their own interpretation of it. Speaking of line actors, some of these people definitely know how to turn a joke around on you. Be watching for some terrific stilt actors, a few skateboard-happy zombies, and look carefully for a voodoo queen with her reptilian pet. This one is a photo op waiting to happen. Funny story here. One guy in a full-bodied werewolf suit rolled up on me, snarling and growling away, trying to make me jump. Not one to be intimidated or outdone, I turned around and started to scratch his back, trying to soothe him and saying, "Good boy, nice doggy, sit, sit." And what does he do? He jumps on me, panting and yapping like an enthusiastic puppy, and then proceeds to start humping my leg, quite vigorously, much to the crowd's amusement and my dismay, may I add. Ugh. Even I have to admit that was clever. This is not to imply that either attraction is a laugh fest. Far from it. Be warned, once you're in there, all bets are off. They take their jobs quite seriously. I have to pay the highest compliments to the staff. I had a chance to talk to several folks there, and their hearts are in the right places on a number of things. As ever, we initiated a few conversations and got terrific responses from everyone we spoke to, especially when they heard where we were from and that we were home haunters too. One guy was so tickled he just blurted out that they do this for people like us. We're their most important critics, and without us, they're nothing. And while we were flattered by that remark, I found it very hard to take it seriously from someone dressed up as a homicidal oak tree. This brings up what I meant by their hearts in the right place. Quite a few of the major haunts we've attended to has always said that we are their greatest critics, and I think this is a sign of a haunt doing the right thing. And really, the best haunts are the ones who have said that to us. 2008 was a particularly tough year for my family. My father had triple bypass surgery that July. My wife was in the process of building her own business, and her grandmother's health began fading fast. We had to make an emergency trip to Atlanta in early October for what we thought would be a final visit before she left us. Part of that trip was our first visit to Netherworld. While waiting our turn in line, I spoke to another actor about the circumstances of our visit. And you know what? This guy went out of his way and told all the other line actors, so, as we moved down the trail, my wife got well wishes and hugs from all the ghouls. That's something you just don't forget. And from the bottom of my undead heart, thanks guys, that meant a lot. Is this safe for kids? The secondary gorier haunt, no way. Do you really need to ask? As for the main event, it's big, long, and dark, and the atmosphere will freak little ones out. Heck, I saw a few of the adults lose their marbles in there. Be aware that these haunts require a bit of physical activity, in particular the secondary attraction. Be prepared to do a bit of squeezing, stretching, and maybe even a little crawling on your hands and knees. I mentioned earlier that America Haunts had produced a segment on them a few years back, as did a one-shot program called Halloween's Most Extreme. Both are out there on YouTube, in addition to a ton of news articles and personal videos on them. Take some time for a closer look at Netherworld's website. It's full of photos, background information, and pay special attention to their links section with all kinds of Halloween and Netherworld-related goodies. Well worth investigation. Things to do in Atlanta. Well, in case you have been living under a rock for the past 3 years, AMC films The Walking Dead out there. I have a close friend who keeps an eye on what's going on with it, and from all accounts, if you can find them, they're pretty cool about visitors to the set. Just don't make a pest of yourself. To paraphrase our local baseball team out here, do not interfere in the affairs of zombies, for you are crunchy and taste good with ketchup. Hint, hint. I'm uncertain if they are still filming as I record this. The premiere is the 14th of this month, but they were still filming last year when the second half of that season was well underway, so your guess is as good as mine. If I get any hot tips on what's going on, I'll try to let them slip on the Hauntcast Minions Facebook page. Other things to do. Atlanta is huge, and there is so much to take in. We've been there twice now and barely scratched the surface. What can I tell you? The Atlanta Aquarium is just breathtaking, one of the biggest in the country. You can literally make a day out of it in there alone. And while there, take note of the Coca-Cola building nearby. It's worth a picture. Also worthy of mention is the Atlanta Zoo. It's not huge, but its exhibits are well balanced and it's a nice afternoon outing. And if you like your rock and roll live and loud and late night, I highly recommend checking out a local club called the Masquerade. Their website is www.masqueradeatlanta.com. Also, directly behind the club is a very adult haunt called the Chamber of Horrors, sponsored by Gorehound Productions. Tread at your own risk. Very hardcore and definitely not for kids. If you have the chance, check out a few of the older cemeteries in the city as well. They have a flavor all their own, and the stones are quite unique and can be very inspiring. By the way, everything you've heard about Atlanta drivers is quite true. We saw some hair-raisingly stupid bad moves on the interstates out there, and long rush hour traffic jams are the norm. Take heed and plan your jaunts accordingly. In regards to hotels or motels out there, we've always been very partial to Super 8s. No, they're not the Ritz-Carlton, but they're cheap, they're clean, and considering how little time we spent in them, they're just what we needed. Just a suggestion. When all is said and done, I'm giving Netherworld 5 Screaming Scullies. Really, this is one of the best places for a Halloween treat. This is truly the place where monsters dwell. As ever, drop me a line at eric@hauntcast.net with your comments, critiques, and suggestions, or look me up on the Hauntcast Minions Facebook page. I'm always glad to talk to new and decaying faces. Be aware that I won't be around all that much this month. Between our own haunt, traveling to explore brave new attractions, incoming company, and our Walking Dead season premiere pizza party, free time is going to be a luxury. Also give a peek to my blog, The Weister's Halloween Haunt Journal, a link to which is on the Hauntcast links page. This month, as I delve a bit more into Netherworld, it's going to be quite the photo-intensive affair. Before wrapping it up this month, there's a few things I'd like to mention. After the tragic events this past July in Colorado, I've heard a lot of parents talking about keeping their kids in this trick-or-treat. From the bottom of my heart, people, don't. Trust me, there will be a marked increase in neighborhood watch members out there, and your little ghosts and goblins will be quite safe. In our own neighborhood, Lisa and I volunteer as part of our own local troop. The apartment complex we live in attracts absolutely no kids. They come during the course of the season to check out our place, but we have yet to have one trick-or-treater, and we've been here since 2005. What do? We dress up, take big bags of candy out with us, and just mingle in there with the crowds. The neighborhood we are part of has tons of kids, and the parents are quite aware of who we are. And we hand out candy, and all the while keeping our eyes open and cell phones close. It's all part of it, folks. While you're slaving away on your own home haunts as you listen to this podcast, at least you better be, take a look at betterhauntsandgardens.com, a great site for both finding local home attractions and maybe even plugging your own. Take a look. You won't be disappointed. Finally, I want to wish everyone a very happy, fun, and safe Halloween 2012 from both my wife Lisa and I. Get those haunts rigged up and scare the little twerps senseless, people. Hope everyone has a terrific time, and I sincerely hope that I've helped at least a few of you in your quest for the better scare this season. And there's plenty more to come. Next time around, we're coming off the road for a while as November has a big fat conference call between all of the Scream team. After that, we're going to begin a series on the history of commercial haunts in the USA, taking a close look at influences, development, and evolution. I'll resume my regular reviews in February. We'll see how it plays out. Until then, as ever, remember Sven-Gulliam, brush your fangs, comb your face, and drink your milk before it clots. And now, more than ever, stay scary.
Interviews with haunting gurus.
Joining me as our haunting guru guest for Samhain, we have the award-winning haunter from Devious Concoctions, DC Cemetery, DC Props, and DC Design Studios. It's Brent Ross. Did I miss anything in there? Did we cover all the DCs and Devious stuff and all that?
Yeah, we kind of just compile them all into DC Design Studio, which no one even remembers anymore. It's just kind of switched to DC Props. But yeah, you've got them all.
Now, I noticed that you haven't posted a video of your haunt since 2009. Is there another video out there, or have you not posted another video?
So 2010, we took off. 2011, I think it's still sitting all in raw footage. I totally forgot about it. So I do have a 2011 haunt. I will hopefully get around to posting that video. This year we're not doing the haunt again. So DC, as it grows and grows, it just gets harder and harder to do a home haunt, with the business on the side. So the business is taking over the haunt, let's put it that way.
But in 2010, did you have riots in the street? Were people distraught that they couldn't come and check out your haunt, or what was the situation?
Well, it's weird. So since all the iron gate, or all the steel gates and everything in the pillars, a lot of people think that that's real. So people are driving around looking, and it was funny because even though we didn't do the haunt, it was you couldn't just totally strip the haunt, out of the haunter. It had to have something. So it started out, well, I'll put my Candyman out in the front yard and still give out candy. Well, I can't put the Candyman out without kind of a facade and a door. Well, if I'm going to already do that, let's throw some ankle ticklers in. Oh, well, if I'm going to already do that, let's completely light the front yard. Well, if I'm going to do that, I might as well throw tombstones all the way on both sides. Oh, if I'm going to do that, I might as well throw some air cannons in. So pretty soon it was a normal yard haunters display. It wasn't like a year off. So even my wife laughs. She's like, you're the only guy that takes a year off and still does more than most normal human beings would.
When I kind of got into this a couple of years back, maybe about 6 years back, I discovered this community of haunters and the home haunting and the websites and all this other crap. I almost immediately stumbled across yourself, Steve Hickman, a bunch of these other people who were, quote unquote, the kind of the big granddaddies of home haunting, the people who were doing the biggest, baddest home haunts out there. What was your whole situation with Steve and some of the other guys who were kind of, who are out of the scene now as far as on the boards and the forums and whatnot, still doing haunts, most of them, but, some of that earlier generation of home haunters in the late 90s, early 2000s, like, what was that whole kind of scene like as you were kind of coming up through that?
Man, you make me feel old doing all that stuff.
I know.
But, that was cool times. That was a lot of more social. It was in the same time that the internet was young and innocent, and there wasn't a lot out there, so it was kind of a lot of sharing. And when we actually, that's how I started writing the books. It was meeting all these guys and sharing stories and sharing tips and techniques, and pretty soon it was so many people started asking me, how do you build this? How do you build that? That's how the books kind of came out. It was just, I can't keep answering these emails, repetitively. So I just started composing it all into these books. And, it was a huge wealth of information that was just kind of all just pouring out of everybody. And we'd meet at Transworld every year and, sit in Rickard's bar and just shoot the shit from the second that Transworld closed until the minute or hours after the bar closed. And it was all of us. There wasn't a whole lot of egos, and everybody was just having a good time, and it was just a bunch of friends sharing their love of building stuff. And it was definitely a highlight in my can I say haunting career or haunting life, that I'm very thankful for all those times that I was able to share and collaborate with all these guys.
Obviously an obsessive hobby, but it was a hobby. It wasn't a business at that point. So.
I mean, you know what? I actually don't really know where I think Devious Concoctions just happened to be, I was trying to figure out names for my website, and, all of a sudden Devious Concoctions, we're building stuff that was, devious, and, it was a little, I was still,
a concoction, so.
Yeah, my lifestyle and concocting things. So those are the two slam dunks. Put those together. Devious Concoction was born. The haunt turned into the DC Cemetery.
How come that you've never taken that next step into going pro?
I've definitely thought about it many a times. I personally like doing a haunt that I completely have control over. I can make it the way I want it. I can enjoy it. Whereas, I think when you get into the pro haunt, you're completely customer driven. You're doing everything you can to make them happy, and which is great. It's a great business plan. But as a creative outlet, it's just not really what I pictured what I wanted to do. I can still, with building the stuff, professionally, I can, delve into the creative side and still have fun and still, maintain a passion for the industry and haunting, without having to go full bore into being a completely, pro haunt taking over your life kind of deal.
Now let's get into some specific type of questions. I'm going to ask you a few questions about my haunt.
Okay.
And you can kind of help me out, and maybe we can help out other people as you kind of cover some of these questions. Okay.
Hell yeah.
Okay. So, Brent, I'm running a Husky compressor. It's about a 26 gallon. I have about, I think, 6 pneumatic props being run off of that same line, off that compressor. I have, I have a coffin sit-up. I have an air cannon. I had your rat spitter. I had a coffin sit-up, rat spitter, monster in the box. So let's say I have roughly, without going, I think about 6 pneumatic props. It seems like I was pretty much maxing out my compressor at that point last year. roughly, did you have some kind of a ratio of how many props, pneumatic props, you can run off of a certain amount of gallon compressor, or how does that work out? How do you break that down to figure out roughly how many you can run?
Well, there's the mathematical way of doing it, which is extremely difficult to calculate. You basically need to know how many actuations you're going, plus how much volume of air each cylinder is moving, how many times it's moving in its sequence, how frequent the prop is firing off. So, you know what? That's the most complicated question that anyone's ever asked, and it's asked all the time. I mean, it's the first question to ask. Basically, if your props are not running properly, you're starved for air.
So when they're not working properly, you have to add more storage tanks or something else to increase the amount of air that's available to those props.
Well, it's a 50-50. It's one of those, like you said, you have a 26-gallon compressor. That's a good-sized compressor. However, just because it's got a big storage tank doesn't mean that it's got a motor that's powerful enough to supply it. So, you know, as compressors are staged, their stages light duty, intermittent duty, continuous duty. Light duty being pumping up your tires for your bike or your car. Intermittent duty really gets into, you know, the home air compressors that give you anywhere from airbrushing up to pneumatic nails and, you know, things like that. Compressors in that realm are not meant to run, you know, continuous duty. So you jump into the continuous duty air compressors, which are really meant for construction and auto body repair, restoration, things like that, where you're running pneumatic tools 24/7, you know, or all during business hours. I mean, that's kind of the leap that most home haunters, you know, unfortunately are either unwilling to take or financially can't do. And, you know, there's fixes, let's say, but I mean, the root of the problem is really going to be the compressor is just starved. It's running at its hardest for as extended periods of time, putting extreme pressure on, you know, the motor, or extreme use on the motor. My old compressors, we used to put a big, huge, like 24-inch fan in front of the motor and just have that thing pumping at all times, because you could fry an egg on the top of that. You know, it was disgusting. It's actually scary. But, you know, I started out with like a 15-gallon compressor, jumped up to a 30-gallon, jumped up to a 30 with an extra 30 tank. Now I've got a 60-gallon Ingersoll Rand 2475 two-stage compressor, not three-stage. You know, and that thing still runs constantly. So, I mean, the question on how do I get my compressor to turn on at the start of the night and never start up again until tomorrow, it'll never happen. I mean, it's like cutting an airline or poking a hole in your tire and trying to keep it, you know, pumped up while you're driving. It's just it's a problem that there's no solution to.
If a person like myself is running a 26-gallon and they wanted to increase the storage, let's talk about adding storage tanks. How you can do it properly. Maybe how long the lines need to be. Does it make a difference how long the lines are?
First, we'll throw a little disclaimer in. There's definitely ways without replacing your compressor. However, just let it be known that the strain that you're going to put on the motor will shorten the life of your air compressor. You know, if you already have it and you know that 10 years down the road, you know, you might need to replace it, go ahead, do these next steps. But you've got a little Harbor Freight 15-gallon air compressor and you're going to go run 70 extra gallon or 70-gallon tanks, you know, expect that thing to blow up. I mean, maybe not in a fiery mess, but it probably sees.
No, I've had the Harbor Freight pancake compressor, and I got about 2 seasons out of that thing before that thing basically seized up and died. I don't think I'll be buying any more air compressors from Harbor Freight. You know, I did make that jump to the Husky, which seems to be a fairly decent air compressor, but the thing was running almost consistently the entire night. So the next step, after you've used the disclaimer and told people that these next steps will probably kill your air compressor sooner versus later, The next steps are?
So I'll just kind of field a lot of questions that I get is, the most common setup is somebody's got a yard haunt and they do not want anyone to hear their air compressor running. Great. Some of the smaller, cheap air compressors are loud as hell. You want to get that thing as far as you can away. But no, the further you run your airline, the further that thing has to pressurize. The good thing is the longer your airline, the more storage. However, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to run the biggest airline you can from your compressor. So let's say that you're going to put your compressor in your backyard. You're going to run a 100-foot airline to your first prop. Great. However, I would recommend putting a storage tank at your first prop. So you have your tank in the back with your air compressor, and it's going to feed another tank. That's really your absolute basic for providing enough air to the front yard that your compressor can run continuously and supply this tank. But you're going to need a big feed line. I would recommend at least 3/8. Once you get past 3/8, you kind of get into making your own airline, and you can go up, 1-2 inch. I use 1.5 inch from my compressor out to my first air tank. It's a 10-gallon air tank that we've welded ports into, so it's a main distribution tank. We put ball check valves on every single one of those outlets so we can depressurize any area of the haunt just by the switch of a manual ball check valve. But that provides me, 120 PSI with a very, very high CV value with little to no restriction. And then off of that, we tee off to multiple other tanks, again, going down in size. So, our first 10, 15 gallon storage tank will now start feeding 10s or 7s or 5s, especially around air cannons or ankle ticklers, spitters, things like that are huge air hogs. And kind of stage your haunt that, you don't want to put a prop that requires a high pressure or multiple movement. You don't want to put an air cannon in between that prop and your store or your air supply, because every time the air cannon fires, it's going to starve all of the air from any path, to refill that tank, especially these big 5-10 gallon air tank or air con. Wow, I need to stop drinking beer when I do an interview with you, Chris. One of the biggest things to take into consideration is staging your haunt and placing your props in respect to the air. What you want to do is you want to have your main air source go to the prop that needs the next largest amount of air, being a multi-movement prop or something similar that requires, maybe 100 and 120 PSI at all times. You don't want to put an air cannon in between that air supply and that multi-movement prop. Every time that air cannon fires, it's going to starve air from not only your feed tanks, your compressor, but it's also going to pull from all the lines. So if you put a regulator or a PSI gauge down at the furthest prop you've got, even though your compressor says 120 PSI, while everything's moving, you'll be amazed that 100, 200 feet down the line, you might have 20, 30 PSI, and that needle is bouncing. That being the case, that your air compressor is starved and it's working. It won't even work hard enough to supply the proper PSI. So really, laying out props is a huge, something to definitely think about, as you're laying these things out. So that being the case, the next thing is laying out proper lines. Albeit it's not the easiest and or most cost of means, but a closed loop air system is great if you can do it. Basically what a closed loop system is it's a complete circle. You have you have 2 air inlet outlets at your compressor. You run a line that makes a complete circle. It goes, literally to the front of your haunt, all the way around and back to the air compressor. What that does is it supplies air from 2 directions. If your left side of your haunt is starved for air, the right side of the haunt is going to provide it, and vice versa. In that closed loop system, you can start adding air accumulation tanks. In those air accumulation tanks, you tee off of that. Each tank, this is very hard to explain without pictures, but if you can think of a big circle with these tanks mixed throughout, And off of those tanks, you kind of have branch tees that supply your smaller props. So
if you were, let's say we're looking at a circle, and you had maybe a tank at 9 o'clock and a tank at 3 o'clock. Now you would need to have a compressor that would have 2 outlets on. Would that be correct? Or
yeah. You can get a manifold tee.
Oh, just a manifold. So if you had a manifold and you just ran the line out in 2 different directions, one out each side, and just created a big loop.
Yep.
That is the ideal situation, is what you're saying.
That's a closed loop system, ideal for supplying air properly. It still gets into the matter of which side is going to starve more, and can your compressor, supply. Don't go out and buy a 5-gallon air compressor and then add 50 gallons of storage tanks. The motor, there's a reason that there's a 5-gallon tank on that thing, and if it's not a continuous duty, it is not meant to be running. What's called the duty cycle on an air compressor. It might run for 5 minutes, and then before it overheats, it cuts off. You don't want your compressor cutting off. You think it's turning off because it's hit its PSI and it's perfect. It's not. It's overheating. Touch the thing and you can burn yourself. So, a continuous duty is really, if you start getting into a lot of air props, just know that a continuous duty air compressor is what you're going to need. It's what you're going to want. If you're spending, $1,000 here and there, you got $30,000 worth of pneumatic props out there, and you've got a $250 air compressor. It's like having a Ferrari with one gerbil in the engine compartment, and you want it to do 200. It's not going to happen.
The main line I'm going to run out is going to be one of the thick. I think I have a 50-foot line that will get me almost into my mud room, and then I have a short distance from there to my first tank. Okay? So I'm going to probably run another 20-foot line. Same thing. It's the thick rubber Goodyear line. I'm assuming that's what it is. So I'm going to run that out to the first tank. So when it gets to that tank, now from that tank onto the other props, I do not want to run a 1/4-inch tube. I want to still be running those thick 3-inch lines from that point on. Because I always over the last couple of years that I used to only run the thick lines, and then over the last couple of years, people were telling me, "Oh yeah, you just run these these little lines, the 1/4-inch lines." So I started changing everything over to 1/4-inch lines. So not the way to go.
Well, it's 50-50. If the 1/4-inch line suffices and it supplies enough air, you're fine with that. It's when the real test is, if you have a pressure regulator at the end of your line hooked up to your prop and the needle is staying at the pressure that you need, you're fine. Leave it at the 1/4-inch. I'm really referring to when you need 100 PSI at your furthest prop and that needle's at 50 and dancing every time something else goes. It's very, very hard to run a full air system and not have the needles move. It just... air flows in the path of least resistance, it's going to move. If your furthest left is doing nothing and your furthest right is being starved, it's going to pull from the furthest left. So there's no real way to figure that out. So it's better to do the Tim the Toolman Taylor kind of thing and just oversize your lines. And 1/2 inch is great. For your 7 things, you might want to jump up a little bigger. You can go McMaster Carr and you get their choose a color, flex tube, maybe 3/4, 1 inch from your compressor to that first big 10-gallon tank. That guarantees that you don't have any restriction between those two. But also remember that the bigger the airline, you have air storage within that airline. So if you have a 5-inch tube, you're not going to get that big, but if you have a 5-inch tube, you have 5-inch times however many feet your tube is. That's all air storage. So, there's no harm, no foul in having, huge lines, except the fact if a line gets breached, it snaps, cuts, somebody cuts it on accident, something like that, and it starts whipping around. That's extremely dangerous, especially if your compressor is supplying it with 120 PSI.
The length of the line, not really an issue. It does provide you with extra storage. It's not diminishing the PSI. So if I'm running a line out to 3 different props, and I have, let's say, my air cannon on the farthest end,
and then I have my bushwhacker that you made for me, and then something else, and I'm running 3 different props off of that one line. Then that's going to be an issue because my air cannon's on the farthest end. Especially if
the air cannon. I mean, you kind of get into the what is going off at what time. Think of it kind of like water. If your air cannon, if you have a glass of water, your air cannon fires. In essence, you dumped out half of your glass or your entire glass of water. Put it back up, right? Now the water has to refill it back up. So instead of your bushwhacker or the other prop being supplied with, the proper air that it needed, your air compressor is completely supplying that 5-gallon air tank for your air compressor to fill it back up. So in a non-firing mode, all of your props are pressurized to 120 psi. Nothing's going off, no air leaks, nothing. Your psi gauge should be locked at 120. It's not moving. That air cannon fires, you'll see that whole line drop to 80, 70, 90, somewhere in that range, and slowly creep back up. The problem is, if your bushwhacker, like you said, needs 110 psi, and your compressor is feeding that air cannon to fill it back up, it's either not going to operate or it's going to operate completely different than it was programmed to be.
What if I have a manifold coming off of that? Let's say I think I have a 13-gallon tank that I'm using to feed. I think it's only 2 props on that side of the haunt, as a matter of fact. Okay. So let's say, actually, I probably won't have a 13, maybe have an 11-gallon tank at that point.
Okay.
So 26 feeding into 11. If I did a manifold there and I split it off to 2 different props, I had one line running off to the air compressor, one line running off to the bushwhacker, because that's what I'm going to have on that side. If I have the line split off of that tank, will it make a difference?
In an ideal world, you would run, instead of having your manifold on the air tank, you would have your air cannon supplied directly to the air compressor that's got a much larger tank. So take your little 3-outlet manifold, run one of the airlines directly to your air storage tank that runs your bushwhacker and the rat and things like that, and then run a separate, even a 1/4 inch. To supply an air cannon, you do not have to have these 1/2 inch lines. That's overkill. You can run your 1/4 inch. You can run your small airline. Your startle effect is a quick pop. If it's running 10 psi or 110 psi, it's almost the same effect. It might be a little quieter, but it's still going to work. It's still going to pop. It's still going to go off. It's still going to scare people. Whereas your large animation, your talking host, things like that, your bushwhacker, if they don't have the air, on the bushwhacker, the bushes are going to separate. He's going to sit on his butt and he's going to spit. He doesn't have enough air to even pressurize him to lift him up. So you didn't get that whole effect, like, oh wow, the bushes moved and he did something. You lost that whole effect. So supply those, token props with the big airlines. Let the little airlines run the small startle effects. Your spitters, your air cannons, your ankle ticklers. Those are the 3 that strike me as the big air hogs. You can still run them off your manifold, just maybe put a regulator that those guys get 50 psi, and your air tank, your storage tank is is pressurized to 110, 120, and your bigger props are regulated down only to what they need. Keep them at the 80s, 90s, things like that.
So I have your erector, and I love it. When I have the prop standing straight up, when I have the coffin I guess we'd call it a 90-degree angle, I have it running at about 110, 120 psi. He pops right out. I have this Fright Theater Skeleform attached to it, just as we discussed. He comes right out. Though when he comes out, he's coming out in a 45-degree angle. He's angling, So which is still cool. But I was hoping on having more of the full body coming at you, because it seems like a little bit more intimidating when you can see the full body versus it being angled where you're seeing less of the body. So I decided, I can fix this. I'll just tilt the coffin in a 30-degree angle, and I'll put some 2x4s behind it, as we talked about, and I'll angle it up so he'll kind of come up in an angle and he even comes up a little higher, which is even cooler. And he'll be more in a vertical position when he's fully extended, and then he'll retract. So like, I think that's ideal. But what I realized is when I'm trying to fire him, that I have to reach in and kind of give him a little push for him to come out when he's in a 30-degree angle. So how can I fix that? What do I have to do? Because I'm running him at 110, almost 120 psi. How can I get him to come out of that coffin when he's in a 30-degree angle, just tilted back slightly?
So what the problem is it's actually cantilevered weight is putting too much torque on the bars. So if you can picture, holding a 5-pound dumbbell, if you hold the 5-pound dumbbell out 90 degrees off your side, it's extremely easy to hold. Put that 5-pound weight on a 15 or a 15-foot pole and try to hold that steady. You might be able to do it, but it's gonna veer its way down. That's really what that Skeleform is doing. Even though it's a very lightweight prop, when it's cantilevered, you're basically twisting. So it's just putting, binding pressure on all of the pivots. Adding a little bit of lithium grease. Don't use oil, just, black axle grease or graphite powder spray works really well. If that doesn't solve that problem, your next step is doing a spring assist. Spring assists are extremely great. They're a little sketchy just because you're extending a spring and holding it. You always use extension springs. You're stretching out a spring and you don't want to overstretch that spring. But basically, having a spring assist is what it's going to do is when it's in its resting position, that spring is going to be completely extended. When you trigger your valve, the spring is automatically going to start compressing in, and it's going to pull that scissor extender out. For some of our heavier stuff, when you said you wanted a Skeleform, it's real light, it's going to be standing. We wouldn't have done a spring extend or a spring assist.
So
but
it would be more complicated to add it at this point because you didn't originally weld the piece like that?
No, we actually design them so they can be added really easily. So outside of this interview, if you look at the 3/8 round rod that the cylinder is attached to that runs through the two loops, this probably makes perfect sense to you. No one else.
Okay.
Basically that rod that gets pulled by the cylinder, that should extend out at least an inch or two on each side. You could put the springs on that. What we do is we weld a washer onto the ends as well, which I'm sure are not on there. So you kind of have to figure out a way to lock that spring into place.
Okay, so you're saying the first step is just to put some axle grease around what? The joints of the scissor mechanism?
Yep, so on every single one of those joints or those pivots, there is a bearing or a bronze bushing. It is an oiled bushing, so it does provide some, lubrication, but additional lubrication is always great. Also, check to make sure that those bolts are not overly tight. If those bolts are really tight, that's just, again, it's just holding that scissor retracted. They should be able to spin, but not, spin freely. If you grab them by hand, probably won't turn. You grab them with a wrench, they should be really, really easy to turn. You can back them off. You can loosen the nut a little bit, put a little bit of axle grease or black lithium grease in between the bushing and the metal, and then tighten them back up just a little bit. Do that on all of them. Also, on the two slides where that 3/8 rod is actually traveling up and down with the cylinder, you can lubricate that with black lithium grease.
Okay, so basically just lube it up.
Yeah, lube it up.
Lube job. Okay, so now where can I buy the black lithium grease? Where's the best place to find that?
Home Depot, Lowe's, Orchard Supply, anything like that.
Okay, so they all have it.
Yep. There's also another thing called dry lubricant. It's a lithium, it's a graphite spray. It goes on. It's actually really, really great stuff. We put on all of our horizontal extenders. There's a little trade secret right there. Basically what it does is not only does it protect the metal, it goes on wet, dries, completely dry. So unlike lithium grease where it's going to be nasty and sticky and, get dirty and everything else, gather grunge, The graphite spray sprays on as a liquid, dries. It's great lubricant.
One of my minions wanted to find out, how do you get the city to close down your road for your haunt? What do you have to do? What kind of red tape do you have to go through?
So you got to put on a lot of chapstick because you have a lot of ass kissing. So it's absolutely not a common practice. So in city of Mountain View, where I live, we kind of have been doing it for so long, and we've been residents for so long, and the whole neighborhood, we got a lot of neighborhood support. So we, got a bunch of signatures stating that everyone that was affected in this 6-block radius is okay with having this small section of road closed. We actually signed up for a block party permit, which is not legally the correct permit for what we were doing. However, we went by it stating that we are getting a block party permit, not for solicitation or a party or what they're normally used for. We are completely doing it for safety reasons of people driving their cars through a populated area. It is great to have the street closed off for, the convenience of being able to stand back and kind of take the whole thing in. But really the main reason that we closed the street was for safety reasons. You get in real good with your city if you're going to want something like that, because, if you don't have their support, you're going to be absolutely miserable because they can shut you down. Not to get completely off topic, but also take it into consideration that if you are going to try to get a little bit bigger and you want this community support, that you need to go by their codes. The first year that we actually invited the city of Mountain View to come in and not only request a block party permit, but we also invited them to come see the haunt and have some private, tours and things like that. Within like a half an hour of us dropping the flyers off to them, we had the police chief, the fire chief, the building and code inspector, and like 4 or 5 of the real high up, codes all already at the haunt, and they inspected everything. They were very nice, but it was you can't use that extension cord. This needs to be this kind of wire. You need to have specific fire extinguishers every, 20 feet that need to be accessible. And I mean, it was actually really scary, but it was a very big jumping point in DC that, with their kind of a little bit of their guidance and, hey, get this fixed and then we don't have a problem. We were able to change up all of our wiring, and fortunately we already had been doing a lot of, professional grade wiring just due to the amperages that we were pulling, that they were happy with that aspect. But it's a crapshoot, because if you get your city involved, you either are asking for a huge amount of support or a huge amount of resistance. They have their job to do. They have to, enforce building code and, temporary structure permits and things like that. We had a haunter last year that was on the news in a local town that he had spent a huge amount of time building a huge facade in his backyard, and it was nowhere near code. It was, an obstruction, an eyesore for other neighbors. And even though he had worked for months building that thing, he was completely shut down. They parked a truck in front of his house and made him take the whole thing down. He was not allowed to enjoy it, and it happened like a week before Halloween. So, again, be friends with your neighbors, get them involved, and either get full support of the city or, do it to a scale that, doesn't drive attention.
Brent, it was great having you again, and happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween to you guys, too.
Screamouts.
Samhain Screamouts go out to Brandon Whitaker for the Rivertown Pumpkin Ale. Best pumpkin ale I've had to date. It was a Halloween party in my mouth. To Robert James for the Vent Gear Motors for my Tombstone Popper and for the assistants helping wire them up. To Darknet Designs. He'll be offering discounts on packages every month and offering up a free website every quarter to our subscribers. It's a $280 value. Go check them out at darknetdesigns.com. Screamouts go out to the entire Scream team for continuing to cowboy up and put this train wreck of a show on every single month. Make sure you take plenty of pics and videos of your haunts this year for the Home Haunters DVD collection and video awards. This is their 13th anniversary of the video collection. Also, Chris Ainsworth will be starting a Canadian Haunters Video Awards, and I will be one of the judges. Oh, also Screamouts going out to HalloweenRadio.net and HalloweenRadio.com for running our commercial. And lastly, to Robert Beach from Brandywine Cemetery for the Laser Vortex. He may still have a few more for sale. They're $80 and phenomenal. Contact him at info@brandywinecemetery.com. Instead of having Scully pull his hand out of his pants to pick the winners, what we're going to do is do them all on video. So just go to the YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/user/hauntcast to find out if you won. We'll be giving away a book from Chris Kulstrom, which is Interactive Games of Murder and Mystery. We'll also be giving away 8 sample packs of Brutal Rust. So there'll be 8 winners. They'll all win a sample pack of Brutal Rust. They're all about $22 plus shipping. So this does not disqualify you from winning any other future prizes for the rest of the year. So you would still qualify for the other CFX masks and any of the juicy prizes that we have coming up. The November episode of Hauntcast may or may not be out on the first Friday of the month due to everyone's schedule with Halloween. We'll do our best. We'll keep you posted. Make sure that you join the Hauntcast Minions group if you're not already joined. Befriend Scully O'Toole on Facebook. Like the Hauntcast show page. And follow us on Twitter. Well, stick a pitchfork in me. I am done. Remember me, minions. Pay respects to the dead. Don't break the rules. And scare the shit out of everybody you can. Happy Halloween to you all. As for now, the dungeon is closed.
Well, kiddies, that's it for this episode of Hauntcast. Until next time, stay scary.
Happy Halloween.
Yeah, happy Halloween.